Chapter 105. Fu Jing's status was indeed very high. It was not only because of her personal influence. As the beloved daughter of a pathmaster, she was truly the daughter of a wealthy family. Her status was much higher than that of a young lady from a large family. The reason was simple. Fu Jing was the only daughter of the pathmaster, and the pathmaster alone was enough to suppress a large family. It was precisely because of this that she, who'd been doted upon since she was young, felt exceptionally surprised and humiliated when she was directly disregarded by Gunan. In fact, she should be thankful. If she had a mission and Gunan had no interest in attacking her, she would have been a corpse by now. However, Gunan's actions were like a boulder thrown into a pond, causing the crowd to explode. Tang Xian's cousin stood at the side, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Oh my God, Lan Si's brother is too fearless. That's Fu Jing we're talking about. Not to mention Fu Jing's power. Just her escorts alone were enough to make him suffer. Sure enough, before Fu Jing even said anything, the group of young masters was already enraged. What the hell? Miss Fu hasn't even finished speaking, and he's not giving her any face? Hee, I thought he was a smart person, but he's even dumber than his sister. Isn't that right? When they get to the 6-star region, they'll know how stupid they are. To these young masters, they could already foresee how many people would fight to deal with this pair of siblings after they had offended Miss Fu. However, Gunan still ignored them. He never cared about what others said. He only cared about what they did and whether they would interfere with what he wanted to do. He brought Lan Si with him, but did not leave immediately. Instead, he walked towards a direction in the crowd. There were a few young masters there too. One of them stood up and blocked Gunan's way with a sneer. Brat, I advise you to apologize to Ms. Fu, or else. MMPH. He could not finish his sentence because Gunan did not stop. He grabbed the young master's neck with one hand and flung him against the wall. Bang! Gunan's strength was so great that even though it was just a casual movement, the huge impact caused the entire side hall to shake. That young master even spat out blood crazily from his mouth, and he almost spat out his internal organs. There was a moment of silence in the side hall. Then, the faces of the young man's friends changed. Bastard, what are you doing? How dare you hit? Bang! With another loud bang, another person was smashed to the side by Gunan. However, this time he casually grabbed the person's hair, causing half of the person's scalp to fall off. Ah! Cries of pain, screams, and blood mixed with minced flesh. Such a terrifying scene immediately caused the side hall to descend into chaos. Countless people began to scream and run out. Even Fu Jing's face turned pale. Although she was well-educated, she had devoted herself to her career in the entertainment industry since she was a child. When had she ever seen such a scene? Tang Xian's cousin, Tang Ziwen, also had a pale face. Not only was he shocked by the bloody scene in front of him, but he also had a bad feeling. That guy seemed to be walking towards them. Only Tang Xian's expression was cold. After all, she was from Ming Lu and had seen countless killing scenes. Thus, she could still maintain her composure. Gunan's footsteps seemed slow but were actually fast. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the two of them. Tang Xian no longer held any hope that he would be able to find the two of them directly. She took the lead and said, Ziwen is just acting like a child. He didn't mean to provoke us. Please forgive him. As she said this, she took a step forward. Her inner chi circulated around her body and a strange brilliance appeared behind her, causing people to involuntarily look at her. An extraordinaire in the nuance realm. Fu Jing was also looking over. When she saw this scene, she could not help but exclaim. Even though her father was a Taoist master, it was not easy to see an extraordinaire at this level. She did not expect to meet one on this starship. The group of young masters, who were initially at a loss, also looked as though they had seen their savior. Their eyes lit up. Meanwhile, Gunan looked at Tang Xian and smiled faintly. We haven't seen each other for a few months. Don't you recognize me? Tang Xian was slightly stunned. She stared at Gunan's face for a long time, but could not find any clues. It was only when Gunan casually wiped his face and removed the concealment that she was dumbfounded. Gunan, Gunan nodded and said, "There's something I need to talk to you about. Follow me." As he spoke, Gunan did not even look at Tang Ziwen, nor did he care about the people around him. Whether they were shocked or hostile, he did not care about them at all. If this was a game, what Gunan needed to do was to pick up Lan Si and look for Tang Xian to initiate a conversation. The other NPCs were meaningless to him. Tang Xian only reacted after a long time. She reluctantly digested everything in front of her and nodded lightly. She was also curious about Gunan. Therefore, Tang Xian and Tang Ziwen were added to Gunan's team. They stepped on the blood-covered floor and walked out of the side hall. "Wait!" A delicate shout finally rang out. Fu Jing rushed in front of Gunan in a few steps. This daughter of the sect master, a famous superstar, stared at Gunan with her big eyes, as if she wanted to imprint his face into her memory. Just like that, she stood in front of Gunan and watched him walk toward her step by step. She could not help but feel a little frightened, but she kept encouraging herself. Although she did not know what the relationship between the minute subtlety extraordinaire and this person, moreover, this person had beaten up her friend. Was she going to let him leave? Fu Jing took a deep breath and said, "I don't care who you are. Galaxy has its laws. You hurt." The next moment, she felt her neck tighten, and all her words were stuck in her stomach. Her body seemed to be lifted into the air and suddenly slammed into the wall. "No, no." Fu Jing felt her whole body tremble, but the expected pain did not come. Instead, a gentle force came from behind, and she was supported by a pair of big hands. She opened her eyes carefully and finally saw who it was. She was pleasantly surprised and said, "Big Brother Lu." With such a huge commotion in the number 3 side hall, it naturally attracted a lot of attention. Fortunately, the person who came just happened to see the scene and was able to save Fu Jing in time. Fu Jing, who was still in a state of shock, finally let out a breath of relief. She spoke with a sobbing tone. "Big Brother Lu, you have to help me vent my anger. This guy didn't just randomly beat up people. He even wanted to beat me up." She frequently traveled to the nearby star regions and knew this big brother, Lu, very well. He was a descendant of a prestigious clan that ruled over an entire planet. Even if he wasn't comparable to her family, he wasn't too far off. Furthermore, he was a prodigy and was rumored to be on the stars ranking. As compared to those young masters, he was a true young talent. He would definitely be able to teach that bastard a lesson. But she didn't expect that after her big brother Luli saved her, he would face Gunan with a change of expression. He would eventually let out a bitter smile and lower his head. Chapter 106. Luli just happened to be on his way to the 6-star region. He didn't even know that Fu Jing was here, let alone guess Gunan's existence. In fact, in the eyes of many in Lu's family, Gunan had completely disappeared, even though the Bloodline Alliance's branch had been slaughtered. He's become stronger again. Luli was an expert at the peak of the Nuance realm after all. The unfathomable aura on Gunan's body allowed him to discern this, and he felt even more helpless in his heart. Gunan walked too fast, so much so that the others were left far behind him. Once many people were overtaken by him, it was difficult for them to keep up with his pace, and they could only watch as he walked further and further away. If Luli felt helpless, Fu Jing was completely shocked and stunned. She couldn't understand what was happening in front of her. What kind of family background and strength did Luli have to apologize to this guy? "Brother Lu." She couldn't help but call out in a low voice, but Luli hurriedly gave her a look, signaling her to stop talking. Gunan was still too lazy to say anything about Luli's apology. He just left with his people. From the beginning to the end, he didn't care about Fu Jing's so-called offense. This kind of offense from an NPC only made him feel funny, not angry. It wasn't until after Gunan and his people left that Fu Jing finally had the chance to ask Luli, "Brother Lu, who is that guy?" Fu Jing said with a face full of dissatisfaction. She even wanted to wait until they reached the 6-star region and ask someone to cause trouble for Gunan. As if reading her mind, Luli said in a low voice, "Xiao Jing, I advise you not to provoke him again. His name is Gunan, and Shanghai Pavilion called him the person with the fastest breakthrough in 100 years. He once defeated Feng Zhuotong with a single slash. Lu Li's calm voice echoed, but Fu Jing's face was dull. She felt as if she was listening to a heavenly book. She did not know who Gunan was. She had only come to the 9-star region on a temporary mission and did not stay for long. However, Feng Zhuotang was famous in the 6-star region. Such a famous eternal domain realm expert on the stars ranking was actually defeated by a single blade? If these words did not come from Lu Li's mouth, Fu Jing would never believe it. Even now, she was still hesitating, and the expression on her face kept changing. He didn't want to provoke a super expert, but he couldn't swallow the anger in his heart. Whatever. If worst comes to worst, I'll just ask my father to make the decision. Fu Jing finally made up her mind, and her expression became firm. Gunan had no time to care about what these people were thinking. He walked all the way to the main hall, found a random corner to sit down, and began to reminisce with Tang Xian. Of course, he did not mention Tang Ziwen. The existence of the Ming Lu could not be casually revealed. Although it was said to be reminiscing, it was mostly Gunan asking questions and Tang Xian answering. They talked about her experiences, because Gunan's achievements during this period of time had already spread throughout the 9th-star region. Tang Xian previously thought it was just someone with the same name, but if she still did not understand now, then she would be letting down the training in the Ming Lu. When a mission in the Immortal Devil world was completed, the people in the Ming Lu did reap a lot of benefits. Even the 6th Asteroid Belt branch was rewarded with resources for the first time. Tang Xian also took the opportunity to break through to the Minute Subtlety realm. After her strength improved, it was much easier for her to complete the mission and leave the Ming Lu. She had already retired and treated herself as an ordinary young lady from an aristocratic family. Apart from her outstanding innate talent and tyrannical strength, there was nothing special about her. After all, reincarnation was basically taking over someone else's body. In the minds of ordinary people, it was not a good thing. This was also the reason why the Federation government of the astral realm forbade public reincarnation on the surface. After listening to Tang Xian's experience, Gunan nodded slightly and finally asked his real goal. There's an organization called White Mist in the 6-star region. Do you know anything about it? Tang Xian thought for a moment and said, I only know it's an organization of reincarnators. I don't know the exact location. Her family was a medium-sized business family. They often traveled between 2-star regions, so she knew a bit about the 6-star region. Gunan was not surprised. White Mist was famous, but not everyone knew the location of their headquarters. If they did, they would have been destroyed many times over. Do you know where I can ask? This time, Tang Xian gave a definite answer. There's a place that I'm sure I know. The time of a star region jump could not be determined. It could only give a rough estimate. Gunan and the others were lucky this time. The starship only traveled through the space tunnel for 2 days before reaching the 6-star region. The 6-star region is very different from the 9th-star region. Tang Xian sat next to Gunan and explained to Gunan and Lan Si. There is only one administrative planet here, but it is about 20 times the size of the red carp. Its land area is also far larger than the sum of the 3 planets in the 9th-star region. In fact, even without Tang Xian's explanation, Gunan and Lan Si could see the planet in the distance. It was just that there was no reference in the sea of stars, so they couldn't tell the size. There is only one habitable planet in the 6-star region, and it was the black-yellow planet in front of them. The name black-yellow had been around since ancient times. The 6-star region was the most ancient star region. Many customs and names followed the ancient customs, even though technology had long taken root in people's hearts. When the starship approached, Gunan pointed to the vicinity of the black-yellow planet and said, Are those the dojos? The black-yellow planet was surrounded by a ring of stars, but now there were strange buildings of various sizes on these rings. Some of them were large and prosperous, while others had fallen into ruin, leaving only a few broken walls. Through the glass window of the starship, the magnificent scenery unique to the star rings and the various strange dojos were displayed in front of everyone. That's the star rings. Lan Si sighed, slightly intoxicated. Women always couldn't resist beautiful things. Yes, this wasn't Tang Xian's first time here, so she was very calm and explained the origin of the dojos to them. The dojos must be established by eternal domain cultivators. Only a cultivator's domain can be stable on the star rings. In ancient times, the people of the black-yellow planet didn't know the nature of planets and star rings, so they called the star rings beyond heaven, Tang Xian said with a smile. Anything that can exist in beyond heaven is naturally an immortal's dojo. Guanin nodded in understanding. So that's how the term dojo came about. The civilization of the astral realm had been flourishing for at least tens of thousands of years. It was said that in the early years, the 9 major star regions were separated from each other. It wasn't until the advent of the interstellar era that the cultivators of the central star region were the first to learn how to jump between star regions and gradually conquer the other star regions. After that, there was 1,000 years of chaos. When everyone's vitality was greatly damaged, they finally sat down to negotiate and jointly establish the Interstellar Federation. The strange civilization of the astral realm wasn't what Guanin cared about. He only wanted to know where he was going so that he could ask about the specific location of the White Mist organization. At this moment, Tang Xian suddenly stretched out her finger and pointed to a certain place on the star rings. Do you see that? That's the place you're looking for, the Heavenly Secret Dojo. Guanin raised his head to look over, and he saw an especially flourishing place standing towering there. Compared to all the other places in the surroundings, it was simply like a crane amongst a flock of chickens, and it was even to the extent that it had the feeling of looking down upon all the others. If he looked closely, he could vaguely make out 2 ancient words on the plaque at the main entrance of the dojo. Chapter 107. On the vast, mysterious yellow planet, there are countless organizations named Heavenly Secrets, but there is only one Heavenly Secrets dojo. For a place to be named after Heavenly Secrets, it was easy to guess what kind of function it had. The Heavenly Secret Dojo is the largest information gathering place in the entire 6-star region. As long as you can afford it, there is no information they can't collect. This was how Tang Xian described the Heavenly Secret Dojo. The Heavenly Secret Pathmaster is a person who has lived for thousands of years. It is said that he has another identity in the Central Star region. He is one of the higher-ups of the Shanghai Pavilion. Guanin smiled and said, "But he's just a Tao Lord, isn't he?" No matter how strong a leader was, he was just a leader. He could not compare to a level 4 Breakworld god. Tang Xian couldn't help but frown when she heard that. Don't look down on the Heavenly Secret Path Lord. Even if he is a Breakworld big shot, he has to be treated like an important guest. Guanin heard something else from her words. The 6-star area has a Breakworld being? That's right. Yes. Seeing Guanin's surprised expression, Tang Xian nodded in satisfaction. And there are 2 of them. Starship finally landed. Guanin stepped on the land of the mysterious yellow planet and said to Lan Si behind him, "This new map's monster levels are a bit high." Of course, Lan Si couldn't understand these words and could only reveal a dumbfounded expression. Guanin didn't expect her to understand. He just wanted to complain to her. Originally, he had almost cleared the 9-star region map. If he wanted to, he could even be the local tyrant there for a while. However, after running to the mysterious yellow star, he found that the difficulty of the map had suddenly increased. In the entire astral realm, the 9 galaxies could be roughly divided into 3 grades. Without a doubt, only the central star region could be the first tier. There were slightly more second tier, perhaps 2 or 3. The rest were all at the bottom tier. The 6-star region, on the other hand, worshipped the ancients and produced many powerful cultivators, firmly occupying a second-tier position. On planet Xianwang, there were 2 powerful break-world elites on the surface. There were no less than 10 top-class leaders. There were also many leaders who did not have their own divisions or were affiliated with other organizations. For example, Wei Donghai's dojo was located on the entire mysterious yellow star, and only a few people knew about it, but his strength was not weak at all. Guanin walked out with Lan Si. After getting off the starship, neither Lu Li nor Fu Jing appeared again. Instead, Tang Xian invited him to her house as a guest. You need to make an appointment to go to the major dojos. The Tianji dojo has to be at least 3 days in advance. Tang Xian said with a smile. During this time, why don't you let me take you around a mysterious yellow star? She knew of Gunan's strength and wanted to befriend him on behalf of her family, so she didn't mind being his guide. Lan Si had an active temperament. She had long been curious about the new map. Hearing this, she immediately looked at Gu Nan with sparkling eyes. Although he had to go to the White Mist, Gu Nan was not in a hurry. So he agreed. There was only one giant continent on planet Xianwang. The starship Gu Nan and the others were on landed in the south of the continent. It was called the South Coast. The South Coast is very commercial, and all kinds of entertainment are very popular. It is the closest place to the Ninth System. Tang Xian took the two of them on the street and introduced them to each other along the way. Gunan looked at the antique buildings on the side of the road. It was as if he was back in the world of gods and demons. He did not expect this place to be part of the galaxy world. Just like that, it was an area with advanced technology. Tang Xian seemed to know what Gunan was thinking. She said, I have been to the north before. It is no different from ancient times. There are even feudal dynasties. Gunan shook his head. When he was about to speak, there was a noise in front of him. Martial power, level 3. Ha 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 ha. Duanmu Fan, that piece of trash, has not made any progress in 5 years. If I were him, I would have banged my head on the wall and killed myself, that's right. A piece of trash like him dares to waste the family's resources. He really doesn't know what's good for him. Amidst the laughter, a clear voice suddenly sounded. Life is full of ups and downs. Don't bully the young for being poor. The voice sounded in front of him. This familiar voice made Gu Nin raise his eyebrows slightly. He could not help but look in that direction. He saw a young man with a head full of red hair standing there. The red-haired young man, Duanmu Fan, had a determined look on his face. It was obvious that he was the one who had said those words. He looked around at the people around him like a victorious general. You guys, do you dare to make a half-year appointment with me? We will fight it out in half a year's time. Why not? The people who had laughed at him before said in unison. Gunan watched with great interest. It was rare to see such a pure and natural plot of the main character's counterattack. He turned to look at Tang Xian and saw that she was not surprised. Instead, she had a mocking smile on her face. Duanmu Fan sneered. Just as he was about to speak, a few black shadows flashed in front of him and several weapons fell on him at the same time. These people were all Xiantian realm experts. Although Duanmu Fan had a fortuitous encounter, he had not broken through yet. How could he be a match for them? He did not even have a chance to scream before he was chopped into minced meat. The black shadows then started fighting again. You're the son of Providence. The treasure of Providence is mine. Don't fight for it. It's yours just because you say so? Who do you think you are? Some people did not say anything at all and just fought for it. The things they were fighting for were also very interesting. Most of them were Duanmu Fan's belongings. The ornaments on his neck, the rings on his fingers, the strange objects in his arms. There were even people who dug out his eyes and dug out his heart. A few of them fought for a while. One of them grabbed his bloody heart and laughed. Ha ha ha. It's the extraordinary treasure, the golden heart. As expected of the son of Providence. I didn't think that I would become an extraordinary one day. As soon as he finished speaking, he ran away quickly as if he was afraid that he would be targeted by others. Meanwhile, the other people who had snatched the wrong thing could only spit on the ground and admit that they were unlucky. Gu Nin was watching from the side while Lan Si was in a daze. She could not help but ask Tang Xian, Sister Tang, what are they doing? Tang Xian said helplessly, the heaven and earth planet is rich in providence. There are often sons of Providence who are born and bestowed with treasures of Providence to help them cultivate. Since the rise of the Northern Region King, Yi Chun 200 years ago, there have been more and more sons of Providence like him. Therefore, correspondingly, there are people who specialize in snatching their treasures of Providence. Lan Si came to a sudden realization. Duanmu Fan's treasure of Providence is his heart. Yes. Tang Xian nodded. The golden heart can give a cultivator extraordinary comprehension and almost inexhaustible physical strength. It's considered a pretty good treasure of Providence. At this point, she shook her head with a hint of mockery. However, his providence is still not good. Otherwise, he would have been able to turn misfortune into fortune. How could it have been snatched away? Chapter 108. Tang Xian could only look at Gu Nan's strange judgment in confusion. However, she began to explain further to Lan Siqi about the children of Providence. The children of Providence were favored by the world's providence. They would obtain their own treasures of providence through their own fortuitous encounters to help them grow. The king of the north, Yi Chun, was a peerless genius who had debuted 50 years ago and was now known as the #1 Dao master of the continent. He was the most famous child of Providence. Legend had it that he was born in a small family at the border. He had been talented since he was young, but he suddenly lost his talent when he was 6 years old. From then on, he carried the title of trash for 10 years. It was only when Yi Chun was 16 that he suddenly rose in defiance of the natural order. Not only did his cultivation base skyrocket, but he could also learn any martial arts at first glance and master them as soon as he learned them. His comprehension was shockingly strong. He was even the first to shout the famous phrase, "Don't bully the young for being poor," on the Xianhuang planet. After that, it only took Yi Chun 20 years to advance from an acquired stage martial artist all the way to Dao Lord stage, establishing a huge foundation in the northern region. Fortunately, the favoritism that the children of Providence receive isn't endless, Tang Xian said emotionally. Even Yi Chun stayed at the Dao master level for 30 years. Otherwise, she did not finish her sentence, but Gu Nan knew what she was trying to say. If the children of Providence could improve infinitely, then they really had nothing to do with it. Gu Nan rubbed his chin when he heard the peculiar existence of the children of Providence. No one knew what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Lan Siqi was purely curious. She had never seen such a strange thing in the flowering divine kingdom. How dare those people snatch the treasures when the children of Providence are so powerful? Lan Siqi asked curiously. Tang Xian shook her head lightly. The children of Providence aren't invincible. Many of them have died over the years. Snatching the treasures of Providence before they rise is the best deal. Yi Chun's birth was like the beginning of a big show. Since then, the children of Providence emerged one after another everywhere. The treasures of Providence they had were different. Some were special treasures. Some had eyes that could see through everything, and some even had an old monster living in their rings. As more and more children of Providence were discovered, people gradually came to a conclusion. Some people even specifically hunted them down just for the treasures on them. An era that belongs to the protagonists? Gu Nan sneered after listening to Tang Xian's story. Back then, not long after he had transmigrated, when he had just advanced to the second order, he had also met someone with a protagonist template. However, it turned out that it was all Gu Nan's plan. The strange era of protagonists in front of him had never appeared on the mysterious yellow star for tens of thousands of years, but it had appeared in the last 50 years. If it was just a coincidence, Gu Nan didn't believe it. The continent's first Dao Lord. If there's a Tier 4 powerhouse behind him, or if it's the real first Dao Lord, then it's natural to give him this title. If Gu Nan could think of this, then he believed that there must be people on the mysterious yellow star who could also think of this. But what did this have to do with him, Gu Nan? He came to the mysterious yellow star just to find trouble with the white mist and learn how to obtain the reincarnation task. If others want to stir up trouble on the mysterious yellow star, it won't hinder him. On the mysterious yellow star, there was a solemn and cold dojo with broken swords stuck in the doorway. Fu Jing, accompanied by a swordsman, slowly walked into the door of the dojo and immediately thanked the swordsman. "Senior Brother Wang, I've troubled you again this time." Senior Brother Wang quickly waved his hand and said, "Miss, don't say that. Since you can find the time to come back to the dojo, all the brothers and sisters are rushing to lead the way for you." Senior Brother Wang's words were half complimentary, but the other half was the truth. Fu Jing had a certain reputation in the entire Star Sea. Needless to say, her fans could be found everywhere on the mysterious yellow planet, her home base. Even in the dojo where martial arts were the norm, it was the same. Only, since you're back, come in. A majestic but slightly cold voice came from the dojo, but it just happened to ring in Fu Jing's ear. Fu Jing couldn't help but flatten her mouth, quickly said goodbye to senior brother Wang, and then quickly walked inside. In a study in the depths of the dojo, a black-haired, middle-aged man was waiting for her. The middle-aged man had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. His long hair fell on his shoulders, and the ends of his hair were slightly white. When he was young, he was obviously peerless. At this time, he was slowly wiping the long sword in his hand. Seeing Fu Jing push the door open and enter, he slowly retracted the sword light in his eyes and said calmly, "How was the trip to the Ninth Star Field?" "It was smooth there, but it wasn't smooth coming back." Fu Jing suddenly rushed to the middle-aged man's side, grabbed his arm, and said, "Daddy, someone bullied me. You have to help me." This seemingly ordinary middle-aged man turned out to be Fu Jing's father, Fu Yong, who was known as the sword-down master. Fu Yong placed the long sword in his hand on the desk in front of him and chuckled. "Is it a person named Gunan?" "Huh, Daddy, you know?" This time, it was Fu Jing's turn to be shocked. She didn't think that even her father would know about a small conflict on the starship. However, Fu Yong didn't tell her how he had taught the other party a lesson. Instead, he said in a serious tone, "Don't worry about this for now, and don't provoke this person. I will deal with everything." Her father's words completely stunned Fu Jing. Her emotions were even more intense than when she was warned by Lu Li. "Why?" Fu Jing couldn't help but blurt out. She couldn't understand it. Forget about Lu Li. Why would even her father, who was the symbol of invincibility in her heart, tell her not to provoke this person? Fu Yong looked at her helplessly and shook his head. "I told you to practice martial arts a long time ago and not to hold concerts and release albums all day long. There are some true geniuses." "True geniuses? Can he compare to Lin Tian?" Fu Jing didn't wait for her father to finish and angrily interrupted him like an angry lion cub. "I've already found the boundless water on this trip. As long as Lin Tian can cure the flame poison in his body, he will definitely be able to step into the Downward realm in one go. At that time, I will ask him to take revenge for me." Fu Jing's words were like a barrage of cannons. Fu Yong was dumbfounded when he heard it, and then he flew into a rage. "How many times have I told you? You are not allowed to come into contact with those children of destiny." Fu Yong fiercely slammed his palm on the desk, directly breaking his beloved desk into two halves. Fu Jing was startled by him and felt even more wronged in her heart. She bit her lips and said, "It's too late. I have already given the boundless water to Lin Tian." "Lin Tian? Where is he?" Fu Yong didn't have any of the demeanor of a peerless swordsman as he asked with wide eyes. Fu Jing was a little hesitant and didn't dare to speak for a moment. However, a burst of laughter came from outside the door. Chapter 109. In Fu Yong's study, Fu Yong was trembling with anger when Lin Tian barged in. On the other hand, Fu Jing looked at the young man with admiration and even shyness in her eyes. "Why you're still calling me Miss Fu?" Lin Tian seemed to have understood something. He took a deep breath and said, "Jing," the conversation between the two of them almost made Fu Yong vomit blood in anger. "Lin Tian, how dare you?" Fu Yong suddenly drew his sword, and a terrifying sword gleam instantly enveloped the young man's body. However, Lin Tian only laughed loudly and raised his hand to throw a punch. His punch seemed sloppy and ordinary, but when it was thrown, there was a faint dragon roar. When the punch hit Fu Yong's sword, Lin Tian's hand was already surrounded by 9 silhouettes of dragons, and he directly pushed the sword back. After forcing Fu Yong back with a punch, Lin Tian did not chase after him. Instead, he smiled apologetically. "I've troubled you for the past few days. Please forgive me, uncle. I'll take my leave first." As soon as he finished speaking, he grabbed Fu Jing's waist with one hand and disappeared with her. Lin Tian, who had become a sect master, was too fast. He was so fast that Fu Yong could not react at all. He could only look at the empty study and smash things angrily. However, he did not vent for long. When Lin Tian disappeared completely, he put away his anger and pushed open a secret door behind him. He quickly walked in. Behind a secret door was a strange-looking, pitch-black altar. Fu Yong fiddled with it for a while and entered a message. A moment later, 5 silhouettes appeared and landed on one side. Old Fu, you found Lin Tian's whereabouts? Tell me, where is Lin Tian? We can't let him escape this time. If there's another experiment that escapes our control, the world will no longer be under our control. That's right. Take that Yi Chun, for example. I'm afraid we'll need 3 of us to take him down at the same time. As soon as the 5 silhouettes appeared, a few of them spoke quickly. They looked rather anxious. Fu Yong suppressed his anger and said coldly, "He's already gone. That bastard Lin Tian has been in my dojo all this time." "What did you say?" This time, the 5 of them looked at him in shock. They could not believe that Fu Yong would make such a low-level mistake. Fu Yong's face darkened as he briefly recounted what had happened after Fu Jing's return. "It was my daughter who brought him in. After that, he probably hid in her room. That's why he was able to hide from me." After listening to Fu Yong's narration, everyone's expression became slightly strange. The experimental body created by the 6 of them had ended up hooking up with Fu Yong's daughter. This was something that no one had expected. "Tianji, did you already know about this?" Fu Yong suddenly looked at one of the phantoms and said angrily. This illusory figure was a blue-robed youth. He held a black fan in his hand and was dressed like a scholar. Only the heavenly mystery Tao Lord could be ranked alongside Fu Yong and was also known as the heavenly mystery Tao Lord. However, there were very few people in the world who had seen his true appearance. So very few people knew that the heavenly mystery Tao Lord, who was said to have lived for over 1,000 years, actually had such a young appearance. The heavenly mystery Tao Lord sat calmly and said indifferently, "Of course I know. It's just that experimental body number 96 and your daughter met a long time ago. At that time, he hadn't been found by us yet." As he spoke, he passed a thin piece of paper to Fu Yong. Although it was also an illusory figure, the information on it could be seen clearly. Experimental body number 96, Lin Tian, met Fu Jing by chance 7 years ago. 2 months later, he was found by the Dragon Phoenix Tao Lord as a backup experimental body and was included in the observation list. Fu Yong understood the ins and outs of the matter. He could not help but wave his palm angrily, and the secret room instantly shook. Lin Tian and his daughter met too early. It could be said that it was a complete coincidence. If he had not mentioned it this time, the heavenly mystery Tao Lord would probably not have noticed this small matter. After that, they definitely came into contact. Unfortunately, he did not pay enough attention to his daughter and actually did not notice it. All right, let's think about what happens next. Another person spoke. He had the head of a beast and the head of a human. His head was actually half dragon and half phoenix. It was extremely strange. It was the Dragon Phoenix Tao Lord. The heavenly mystery Tao Lord coldly smiled and said, "Actually, based on the current situation, it is not necessarily a bad thing." Fu Yong's eyes opened wide. He was about to speak, but the heavenly mystery Tao Lord waved his hand and said, "One sword, don't be angry. Listen to me first. According to what you said, Lin Tian is going to find Gunan. That is the best outcome." One sword was Fu Yong's title. He laughed and said, "What? Don't tell me that Gunan can deal with Lin Tian now?" "Yes." The heavenly mystery Tao Lord put away his fan and seriously said, "My people just found out that an important person is attacking in the 9th system. Their target is Gunan." His words sent chills down everyone's spine. They had spent a few decades planning. Hadn't they just wanted to take that last step? An important person in the break world level. That was the level they dreamed of. With such a figure making a move, Gunan was actually still alive and kicking. The meaning behind this was self-evident. There's a genius like that in the world. The Dragon Phoenix Tao Master had a wry smile and shook his head. Compared to him, the children of luck we have created are nothing. Stop talking about useless things. The heavenly mystery Tao Master interrupted him. His eyes looked crazy. "I have good news for everyone. Gunan just applied to enter my training hall." In the courtyard of the Tang family, Tang Xian was holding an application notice. She looked at Gunan strangely. "You applied in one day. You are very lucky," Tang Xian said. She was holding the notice that the Heavenly Mystery Dao Hall had allowed Gu Nan to enter. Gunan did not expect that the moment he settled down in the Tang family, the Heavenly Mystery Dao Hall's notice would come. What do I use to pay for information at the Heavenly Mystery Dao Hall? Gunan asked. An expert at the level of a Dao Lord wouldn't always use the mortal world's currency. Of course, Tang Xian said, special treasures, resources, and techniques are fine. You can even use information to trade, as long as they approve. Gunan nodded. As long as it had value, anything was fine. Money was not an option. Big brother, can I go too? Lancy looked like a curious baby. She looked at him with her big, shiny eyes. That won't do. You stay here and cultivate properly. Gunan looked gloomy as he spoke. Over the past 2 days, he had felt his sin points were not increasing quickly. So, he decided to supervise Lan Si's practice. Oh, Lan Si suddenly became quiet. She did not dare argue with Gunan. She lowered her head and ran away. After Gunan said goodbye to Tang Xian, he prepared to go to the Heavenly Mystery Dao Hall. Before he left, he had a weird feeling. It was like something was going to happen. If you do not have any special resources, you can help the Heavenly Mystery Dao Hall complete submissions to trade for information, Tang Xian said before Gunan left. Chapter 110. As the only planet in the 6-star sector, the mysterious yellow planet had its own unique cultural environment and unique social structure. The existence of the star ring had elevated the status of a Dao Master. It could even be said that everyone below the Dao Master was an ant. If the Dao Master was unhappy, he could take his entire family and ascend to the star ring, while the people below could only watch. If the Dao Master came down every day to kill a few important people, who could stand it? Therefore, the Dao Master's realm in the mysterious yellow planet was like a nuclear weapon. There was a qualitative difference between having one and not having one. Gu Nin did not choose to fly with his own power. Instead, he followed the staff of the dojo and took a small starship to enter the dojo. For players, exploring the various functions of a new map was one of their interests. Mr. Gu, please follow me. A girl in uniform led the way in front of Gunan. At this time, Gunan was already standing in the Tianji dojo. The star ring of the mysterious yellow planet was made up of some floating matter. Without the support of a domain, it was impossible to stand in a normal position. Therefore, the starship directly landed in the dojo. Gunan nodded and followed the girl into the Tianji dojo. However, he found that the space inside was far larger than it looked from the outside. Cultivators walked and asked questions, but strangely, not a single sound came out. It was as if he was in a silent world. It's space. Gunan frowned slightly and immediately realized the nature of this abnormality. In the Tianji dojo, the space was actually cut into pieces. The space that he walked into was just one of them, while the others were also in different spaces. These pieces of space were barely pieced together, so light could pass through but sound could not. The girl beside him had disappeared, and a shadow appeared in front of Gunan. This shadow was dressed like a scholar and held a paper fan in his hand. However, he had never opened it. As soon as he appeared, he smiled and nodded. Dao friend Gu, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Gunan looked at him strangely. Just when the scholar thought he would ask questions like, who are you? Or what are you waiting for me for? Gunan said, I'm not a cultivator, so I'm not your friend. The scholar suddenly choked on his words. Fortunately, he was good at keeping his composure. He only paused for a moment before continuing, Mr. Gu, you are the Heavenly Secret Path Lord. Gunan raised his eyelids slightly and looked at him with a sizing gaze. It was not difficult to recognize the Heavenly Secret Path Master's identity. Even in the dojo, there weren't many people who could exist in the form of doppelgangers. The Heavenly Secret Path Master's expression did not change. He had a faint smile on his face, but there was a hint of seriousness in the depths of his eyes. From his point of view, Gunan's 2 words were more like a clear display of his attitude, an attitude of not deliberately befriending and intentionally avoiding him. Of course, he did not know that Gunan treated every NPC like this. This kind of attitude made the Heavenly Secret Path Master, who was used to scheming, somewhat suspicious. Could it be that Gunan had already sensed it? The Heavenly Secret Path Master's mind was full of thoughts, but but his face was still calm as he said, "My Taoist name is Heavenly Secret. Mr. Gu, why have you come to my Heavenly Secret dojo? Do you have something to ask?" The people of mysterious Yellow Planet had a habit of speaking in such a genteel manner. Gunan used to go to various planes of different civilizations, so he was used to it. He nodded and said bluntly, "I want to find a location of the White Mist organization." The rule of communication between players and NPCs was to express their meaning clearly and accurately. This was the easiest way to trigger a mission. Okay, the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster did not say anything else. He directly took out an eye tablet from the void and handed it to Gunan. The eye tablet was also a special product of mysterious Yellow Planet. It needed to be scanned with the soul. Only experts above the Transcendence level could use it directly. Those below the Transcendence level had to use a tool. The Heavenly Secret Pathmaster's straightforwardness made Gunan somewhat unable to react. However, since the eye tablet was already in front of him, he had no reason not to accept it. He took it and looked at it. It had to be said that the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster lived up to the name Heavenly Secret. It was almost impossible for a third party to know about the matter between Gunan and the White Mist organization. However, the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster could immediately provide detailed information. It was obvious that he had come prepared. This preparation was not because he had anticipated it. Instead, the Heavenly Secret Dojo had already prepared this information and could use it at any time. There were also Pathmasters in the White Mist organization. Naturally, their real headquarters was on the Star Ring. The information given by the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster clearly pointed out the location. Seeing that Gunan was reading attentively, the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster could not help but smile. Giving him the information that the other party wanted in advance was a trick that the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster had come up with on the spur of the moment. He believed that the more suspicious a person was, the more they liked to overthink things. Since the information was obtained so easily, the other party would have to consider the authenticity of the information and the price they would have to pay. Moreover, according to his understanding, the more talented a person was, the more they disliked owing favors. They would never take advantage of others for no reason. However, the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster had miscalculated once again. After reading the information, a smile finally appeared on Gunan's face. He cupped his fists and said, "Thank you." Then, under the stunned gaze of the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster, he turned around and walked out. Even until Gunan's figure disappeared, the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster did not say a word. Wait. The Heavenly Secret Pathmaster felt as if countless divine beasts were stampeding in his heart. He wanted to ask Gunan loudly, "Gunan has the nerve to take such extraordinary information away?" Only when Gunan was far away did the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster put away the helplessness in his heart. He said to the person beside him, 13. A figure slowly appeared beside the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster. He lowered his head and did not speak. Secretly spread the news that Gunan is going to the White Mist, the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster ordered in a low voice. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Don't reveal Gunan's identity. Also, when Gunan arrives at the White Mist, arrange for someone to inform him of this matter." The Heavenly Secret Pathmaster opened the fan in his hand and gently waved it. The figure bowed slightly and then disappeared. From beginning to end, he did not make a single sound. Of course, Gunan was not embarrassed to take something from someone else for free. In reality, for players, everything from an NPC could be obtained at will. It was just that some things had to be paid for, and some didn't. It was just like how some resources could be harvested by the roadside, while others could only be obtained by killing monsters. Although he did not understand why the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster would give him this information for free, it did not stop him from taking it and leaving. Players could accept the logic of helping an NPC complete a quest in exchange for a quest reward. However, if an NPC gave the reward first and wanted players to owe him a favor, it would be ridiculous. Favor? No way. Chapter 111. The sky above the star ring was always dusky, the color of the starry sky. The White Mist organization was located in a very special area. This special area was not formed naturally, but was completely man-made. The white mist was actually surrounded by 11 dojos. What kind of concept was 11 dojos? On the entire mysterious yellow planet, there were probably no more than 200 of them, and white mist alone had 11 of them. Although not all of the 11 dojos belonged to the white mist, and some only cooperated with each other, one could see the strength of the white mist. Gunan stepped on the star ring, calmly looking at the 11 dojos in front of him. He was fearless. Compared to the time when he slaughtered the bloodline descendants, his injuries had completely recovered, and all his skills and methods were activated. His strength had truly reached the peak of the third stage. White mist! Gunan smiled as he looked in front of him. There was a thin layer of mist shrouding the center of the 11 dojos, perhaps the origin of the name, White Mist. Gunan flipped his right hand, and the pitch-black shadow sword appeared. With his current strength, the situation where he needed to use the Bloodblade was becoming less and less. "Sir, please wait." A clear voice came from the side, and a figure appeared next to Gunan. This person was also dressed like a scholar, and his clothes and temperament were similar to the heavenly secret dojo lord. Even a folding fan in his hand was the same style. The scholar cupped his hands and said, "Heavenly secret dojo's Wu Ding has come to save Sir's life." Wu Ding lowered his head as he said this, but there was a faint smile on his lips. Even if the other party's strength and cultivation were above his, as the direct disciple of the heavenly secret dojo, Wu Ding had his own pride. What's more, this trip was indeed to save the other party's life. Wu Ding cupped his hands, but after waiting for a long time for Gunan to reply, he couldn't help but raise his head in confusion. Gunan's figure was long gone, and the latter had already gone far away. This disciple of the heavenly secret dojo unconsciously blushed. Ever since he entered the heavenly secret dojo, no one dared to ignore him like this. But his master's orders could not be disobeyed. Wu Ding could only rush in front of Gunan and loudly say, "Does my lord still remember Fu Jing? A great enemy is coming. Don't you want to know who it is?" Gunan didn't even look at him. He casually slapped Wu Ding's face. Wu Ding's whole body was slapped away, and he even lost a few teeth. Although Gunan had not said anything, his meaning had been clearly expressed. Whoever he loved, it was up to him. On the other side of the star ring, Lin Tian wrapped an arm around Fu Jing's waist and brought her to an ancient dojo. This dojo was slightly dilapidated, as if no one had taken care of it for a long time. Fu Jing couldn't help but ask in puzzlement, "Lin Tian, this is..." Lin Tian smiled and said, "This is the old side of a dojo that I accidentally discovered when I was traveling. Very few people know about it, so it couldn't be a better place to take refuge. But now I don't need it." Fu Jing nodded in realization. No wonder Lin Tian had provoked so many enemies, yet he had been able to avoid the search of so many forces. It turned out that he had a dojo in advance. His luck was a little too good. Now that I've become a Dao Lord, I also have the qualifications to have my own dojo. Lin Tian looked at the starry sky and suddenly said with great pride, "9 dragons refining body, open for me." Following Lin Tian's shout, 9 illusory golden dragons emerged from his body and began to revolve around him. Then they began to expand step by step. This was Lin Tian's unique 9 dragons domain. With this as a foundation, he could quickly gather the star ring and completely stabilize the surrounding space. As the 9 dragons domain continued to expand, not only did the entire dojo shine with golden light, but the huge commotion also attracted the attention of the dojo. A young girl was the first to rush out. "Big brother Lin Tian." The young girl threw herself into Lin Tian's arms. "Good Ling, you really miss me the most." Lin Tian smiled as he rubbed the young girl's head and said to Fu Jing, "This is Ling. She grew up with me and is like a little sister to me." Fu Jing, who was originally staring at Lin Tian, heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. Just as she was about to speak, another person walked out of the dojo. This time it was not one person, but more than 10 women walked out one after another. Each of their expressions and temperaments had their own merits, but all of them were devastatingly beautiful. "Lin Tian, you bastard, you still know to come back." "Brother Tian, Why did you leave for so long this time? Brother Lin, Fu Jing's face was a little stiff. At the White Mist Organization's location, Gunan directly rushed into the 11 dojo alone with his sword. Who are you? How dare you trespass? Sword light flashed, and before the disciple had the chance to announce the name of the dojo, he had already become a ghost under Gunan's sword. Gunan's footsteps did not stop at all, and he continued to walk forward. Unlike the time when he killed Qin Xuanji, this time, Gunan's goal was the foundation of the White Mist and the method to obtain the reincarnation mission, so he did not care about alerting the enemy. After all, the two commanders of the White Mist would definitely not retreat before the battle. Otherwise, the White Mist organization would immediately be destroyed. Enemy attack. Enemy attack. Detecting targets, danger level. Targets, danger level. Downlord level. Requesting to activate the annihilation formation. A series of sharp whistles rang out, and the 11 dojos simultaneously entered a state of preparation for battle. Orders were passed down one after another, showing their extremely high tactical attainments. In the next moment, the star ring under Gunan's feet suddenly became thin, and thick white mist began to surround it. This mist was an extremely corrosive gas, and ordinary extraordinaires would try their best to resist it, but it was useless against Gunan. Just like that, he walked out of the mist step by step, already holding the blood saber in his hand. With a casual slash, the entire formation was shattered with a loud bang. The initial use of the blood saber was to attack non-living units to avoid the curse that came with it. The formation is broken. Inform the headquarters immediately. The formation. The command headquarters of the White Mist Organization continuously received messages from the dojos, and then suddenly fell silent, as if all the signals had been forcibly cut off. However, the meaning of the last message was still clearly expressed. How is this possible? It hasn't even been a minute since the news of the enemy attack came, and the annihilation formation is broken just like that. Our communication with the dojos is through the formation itself. Now that all the signals have been cut off, I'm afraid the command headquarters was instantly in a mess. All the leaders did not know what to do at the moment, so they could only send someone to inform the higher-ups. The higher-ups came faster than expected. An old man with white hair and a beard quickly rushed over. It was Elder Qin, who had previously gone to the 9th Star region. Why are you all panicking? Elder Qin shouted as soon as he appeared. The enemy was prepared, and they broke the formation in an instant. What's so surprising about that? Bring up the image in front of us immediately. Although Elder Qin's voice was stern, it helped everyone find their backbone, and they immediately calmed down. Only then did they remember to find out who the enemy was. However, when the figure of a man in white with a black sword slowly appeared on the image screen, it was Elder Qin's turn to be dumbfounded. His face quickly turned pale, and he almost lost his balance. A few people behind him hurriedly supported him. Elder, are you all right? One of them supported Elder Qin with both hands and asked with concern. Chapter 112. Gunan held his sword in one hand as he slowly walked out of the white fog that enveloped the formation. He didn't stop walking. He passed by all the dojos and headed for the headquarters of the white fog. Everyone could see his goal. Several young boys and girls rushed out from the front. The leader shouted, "Evil thief, how dare you? Today I will..." With a slash of the sword, the children were cut in half at the waist. Then there was a scream from the front. A woman ran over with red eyes. They are just a group of children. How could you? Another slash. Then there was a man's angry shout. How could you do this to a girl who is so weak? You. One slash. Obviously, there were ordinary members in the white fog. They ran out one after another, shouting different lines. All of them were criticizing Gunan. However, whether it was criticism or abuse, or whether it was reasonable or not, Gunan's response was always one slash. He was only here to kill. It didn't matter who was right or wrong. Only the living had the right to reason. Corpses fell in front of Gunan one after another. Blood mixed with the stars, showing a strange sense of beauty. Elder Qin, who was in the command center, was already anxious when he saw people going out to fight bravely. He could only give the order to evacuate all members. He could see that Gunnan was here for revenge. He killed everyone he saw and didn't give anyone a chance to speak. Ordinary powerhouses were no match for him. He could only ask for help from those few. There were many powerhouses in the white fog. Although it was impossible for all of them to be on standby at the headquarters, there were always some powerhouses who stayed behind to guard the headquarters. Wei Donghai put the long sword on his waist. With a cold expression, he slowly walked out of the house. "Father, are you going to fight Gunnan to the death?" Suddenly, Wei Ro was already standing at the side, and a worried expression hung on her face. Wei Donghai just shook his head gently and didn't say anything. Wei Donghai wasn't sure if he could defeat or even kill Gunnan. However, he was quite confident in his sword. Even if he couldn't defeat him, he could at least allay him for a while. After all, the great commander was in seclusion at the headquarters. Wei Donghai? Wei Donghai was shocked when he heard a cold laugh. How could they be here so soon? He suddenly turned around and saw that Gunnan's figure was already not far away. He was still wearing a moon-white robe inlaid with gold, and he held a pitch-black longsword in his right hand. He looked no different from before. However, it was as if his aura did not exist. Apart from his sight, Wei Donghai could not sense him in any other way. The shadow power at the profound meaning level was finally starting to show its power as one of the supreme laws. Light and shadow were two sides of the same coin. The tyranny of light was enough to suppress everything, while the concealment of shadow could completely erase itself from the world. Wei Donghai's heart sank. He knew that Gunnan's strength had broken through again. His realm alone was probably not weaker than his own. "I can't wait any longer. I must strike first." Even Wei Donghai himself did not expect that Gunnan's appearance would put such great pressure on him that he had no choice but to strike first. Unlike Gunnan, who only used weapons as equipment, Wei Donghai was a person who was truly devoted to the sword. From the moment he made up his mind to wield his sword, his spirit, energy, and spirit suddenly rose and became incomparably sharp. A dot of starlight landed on Gunnan's chest. Wei Donghai's sword was so fast that it was impossible to dodge, and Gunnan did not even think about dodging it. Blood began to seep out and slid down Gunnan's white robe, but it did not leave a single mark on it. It was like a smooth metal surface that was not stained by blood at all. This was Wei Donghai's first time fighting with Gunnan. He had a bad feeling that the sword had stabbed him so easily. Gunnan smiled sinisterly. He grabbed Wei Donghai's sword with his left hand and stabbed the long sword in his right hand at his opponent's abdomen. Wei Donghai was a master swordsman. When had he ever seen such a gangster fighting style? All the swordsmanship he had learned was based on the premise that the enemy would not dare to touch the sword. But when the long sword was directly grabbed by someone, the swordsmanship became a joke. He twisted the long sword crazily, and the blade scraped the flesh of Gunnan's left hand. One could almost see the white bone inside, but Gunnan had no intention of letting go. With the passivation effect, the feeling of pain had long been reduced to the extreme. Wei Donghai could not do something like letting go of his sword, so he could only watch as the shadow sword struck and pierced his abdomen. Gunnan smiled and lifted his leg to kick him to the side. The injuries on his body and hands began to recover quickly. "Father!" Wei Ro saw this scene from afar. She immediately rushed over with red eyes and supported the staggering Wei Donghai with tears in her eyes. Wei Donghai's face was ashen as he clutched his chest. Blood was gushing out continuously, and he felt extremely aggrieved. When faced with an enemy like Gunnan, experts like them who were experts in the traditional sense could be completely described as having no idea where to start. They could not defeat him head-on, they could not win by exchanging injuries, and they could not exhaust the other party without getting injured. This was the reason why Gunnan chose agility in the first place. It was because he had unparalleled speed that he could guarantee that he would not be kite. There was no longer any blood seeping out of Gunnan's chest. The injuries on his hand were healing at a speed that was almost visible to the naked eye. Flesh was growing out bit by bit, and it was a hair-raising scene. "Move away!" Wei Donghai pushed his daughter away and held his sword, wanting to continue fighting. But Gunnan's sword had obviously caused him a serious injury. At this moment, Even his footsteps were a little unstable. In contrast to his current situation, there was also the bitterness in his heart. Wei Donghai's divine art, domain, and laws were all for his sword. He used all means to make sure that his sword could stab the enemy, and it would be best if it could kill in one strike. But now, there was someone who was not afraid of being stabbed. So what else could he do? This was like a mage player who painstakingly cast a large number of spell penetration spells, but the enemy was purely health points. His spells were like tickles to the enemy. As Gunan walked forward step by step, Wei Rose saw this and suddenly ran between the two of them. She looked at Gunan coldly with a determined expression. Wei Donghai was instantly shocked and shouted angrily, "What are you doing? Move away. Father, it's my turn to protect you." Wei Ro looked at Gunan with a determined expression and said, "Don't hurt my father. If you have any grudges, take it out on me." Swoosh. The shadow sword slashed from bottom to top, and Wei Ro's entire body was directly cut into two halves. Blood and flesh splattered on Wei Donghai's face, reflecting his incomparably pale complexion. Chapter 113. Of course, Gunan could hear what the NPCs were saying. He was not deaf. It was just that he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Wei Ro, and what she said was so funny that even Gunan couldn't help but respond to her. Wei Donghai was looking at the blood rain with confusion. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. "I want you die." In the next moment, Wei Donghai's area, rules, and god powers all exploded. The sword light was faster and sharper than before. The sword still pierced Gunan without any hindrance, but on Wei Donghai's side, the sensation of the sword's blade was completely different. He suddenly raised his head and noticed it was not Gunan in front of him. It was just a black shadow. Shadow body swap. Wei Donghai used all of his power to attack, but Gunan did not want to take it head-on. Good players knew how to deal damage. They knew which skills could be eaten and which could be dodged. The shadow body raised the sword and slashed. Wei Donghai quickly dodged, but Gunan's shadow suddenly appeared behind him. The sword was coming. Good timing. Wei Donghai's eyes looked cold. His body paused. The sword strangely turned around and went for Gunan. He used a very good sword skill to change the path of his sword. He created a situation where both sides were hurt. Wei Ro's death made Wei Donghai crazy. He only wanted to kill Gunan. He did not care about his own life. But the two swords hit him at the same time. The pain from his back did not make Wei Donghai frown. Gunan, who was turning into a black shadow, made him feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. He struggled to turn around. The person behind him had turned back into Gunan's face. Exclusive rule. He used a shaking voice to say those words. His vision started to turn black. For a cultivator like him, being injured by two swords in a row was like losing half of his life. Wei Donghai was sure Gunan's skill was not an illusion. He had switched bodies. Only people who were going to break the world could have such an invincible rule. It was like Yu Qianling. His exclusive rule was a reflection. Of course, this man-made rule wasn't truly invincible. There are always all sorts of weaknesses. Yu Qianling's reflection was afraid of illegal nomological attacks, and Gunan's displacement also had a weakness. But at this moment, Wei Donghai was no longer allowed to probe. He didn't have much time left. Kill. The sacred swordsman unleashed the last of his strength. A sword light swept across and enveloped both Gunan's body and shadow body at the same time. This was the only way he could think of to break out of this situation. Wei Donghai's sword light was still as fast as before. It struck two enemies almost at the same time, cutting them in half at the waist. But what he unfolded were only two streaks of black mist, and in the blink of an eye, they turned back into shadow bodies, both of them. Wei Donghai was stunned. A sense of danger suddenly arose in his heart, and his body started to go out of control. Puchi. A sword pierced through his chest. The sword came from behind him. It was the third shadow body. Gunan was standing on the side. He was defending Donghai. He was going to use his life to attack. He took the sword and pierced through his body. He wanted to stab the enemy behind him. As Wei Donghai's body slowly fell, it proved that Gunan had been worrying too much. Almost at the same time that Wei Donghai fell, an indescribable presence descended. A shadow appeared next to Wei Donghai. The person who came was a tall man. He wore a silver-white mask. The mask had a weird human face drawn on it. Gunan recognized the picture. In some ancient legend, the face represented a king. I did not expect I would be too late. The person who came sighed. He lowered his head. It was as if he was sighing that he could not save his old friend. Wei Donghai didn't seem to be completely dead. He felt a familiar presence. He opened his eyes and struggled to speak. "Commander, avenge me." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't even wait for the commander's reply before he died. The commander stretched out his hand and closed his eyelids. He then turned to look at Gunan. "Your Excellency, you still dare to show yourself in public. Aren't you afraid that the king of the deep sea will attack again?" Gunan knew who he was talking about, but he didn't answer the question. "You are the commander of the White Mist? Hand over the method of obtaining the world mission, and I can spare your lives." The commander shook his head. "The translation method is the foundation of the reincarnation organization. How can I hand it over to you?" Gunan nodded. He raised his hand and slashed with his sword. The Grand Commander was taken aback. He didn't expect that Gunan would attack without even greeting him while he was still talking. However, such a sword attack couldn't affect the commander. He raised his hand slowly, and Gunan's sword passed through his hand and fell to the ground. However, his hand wasn't injured. It was as if he hadn't been hit at all. Upon closer inspection, one would find that his palm had been cut open. However, there was some fine yellow sand at the wound, which healed in the blink of an eye. Sand transformation? It's the power of the earth Hades. Gunan was extremely knowledgeable. He recognized the commander's origin at a glance. Most of the skills of the earth lineage had such characteristics. They were thick, solid, and extremely difficult to kill. The commander turned part of his body into sand and easily dodged the attack. He then said, "A simple swordsman like you can't hurt me." His voice sounded distant, and there was also a sense of superiority. "You humans have unparalleled talent in terms of comprehension and learning, but your understanding of the nature of the laws is still far from it." The commander was a natural bloodline descendant. Just as Third Tale said, powerhouses like him were extremely proud of their bloodline. While acknowledging the talent of humans, he also mercilessly attacked their shortcomings. As soon as he finished speaking, wisps of fine sand floated and surrounded Gunan unknowingly. In the next moment, the fine sand suddenly shrank and almost crushed Gunan. Unfortunately, it was only a shadow body that was crushed. The shadow body was squeezed into a ball of black gas, but it recovered in an instant. Clones? Let's see where you can run to. The commander had a cold and expressionless face under his king's mask. Immediately after, fine sand began to surround the other shadow bodies of Gunan before it suddenly shrank. "It's over." The commander muttered to himself softly as he watched the yellow sand tighten. There was no longer any aura of life in the air. He didn't doubt the weakness of his opponent. In fact, he didn't think that Gunan would be that powerful. Even if Lin Li was a Dao master and had killed Wei Donghai easily, it was just a joke in the commander's eyes. That was because he had been stuck in the Dao master realm for too long. Although he didn't succeed in breaking through after countless years of accumulation, it allowed his power to accumulate infinitely at this level. Given his current power, he could easily kill a person of Wei Donghai's level with just this move of shrinking sand. Bloodline descendants could increase their power through accumulation over time. That was the most terrifying thing about them. The commander said that he was in seclusion, but he was actually in a deep sleep. Chapter 114. Shadows were everywhere. Where there was light, there would be shadows, and where there was no light, there would be shadows everywhere. On the lightless star ring, an ordinary shadow appeared. Even Commander White Mist didn't notice it until a black sword appeared out of nowhere and pierced through his body. The commander suddenly stopped in his tracks. He looked down at the black sword that pierced through his body, and a cold expression appeared on his face under the mask. However, there was no blood at all from where he had been pierced. There was only sand that was blown away by the wind. The commander slowly turned around. "Troublesome worm, bang." Before he could finish his last word, Gunan had already blown up his head with a punch. Even his mask, hair, and facial features were all turned into sand. However, the next moment, the sand gathered again and condensed into the commander's head. However, without the cover of the mask, Gunnan could see his horrifying face clearly. This commander's face wasn't that of humans, but more like some kind of insects. His mouth and nose were a whole mouthpiece, and his eyeballs were a pair of protruding compound eyes that reflected Gunnan's face. The undying characteristic of desertification, Gunnan didn't feel anything about this face. Instead, he touched his chin and nodded. "Human, you've angered me." The commander's mouthpiece opened and closed, making an indistinct sound. He stretched out one of his hands, which turned into a folded tentacle. There were hairy barbs on the tentacle, like the forelimbs of some kind of insect. However, Gunnan didn't even look at it. He casually cut off the tentacle with his sword, and at the same time, his body swapped positions. His real body appeared behind the commander, and he stabbed his sword at the commander's shoulder. In addition to the replacement ability, the profound power of Shadow could also strengthen several previous abilities. Hidden Shadow was more stealthy and harder to detect, and the number of shadow bodies that could be created was greatly increased. However, correspondingly, as the number of shadow bodies increased, the damage that the shadow bodies could cause also decreased. Therefore, when conditions permitted, Gunnan preferred to attack with his real body. The great commander, who had been indifferent to the attacks, had a slight change in expression. His speed was far inferior to Gunnan's, so he could only explode his body in an instant, turning into dust that filled the sky before gradually condensing at the side. Gunnan lifted the glasses on his face and revealed a faint smile. Before he killed Qin Xuanji, he had discovered some of the secrets of the Bloodkin. These people who relied on the power of the Bloodkin had a source of power in their bodies. Attacking this place would yield twice the result with half the effort. Bloodline essence was the foundation of a bloodline descendant's power, but it was also the weakness they left for their enemies. Under an observer's eyes, there was no place for them to hide. On the other side of the star ring, under the cover of the golden light, a faint dragon roar could be heard. A group of people was rushing toward the White Mist organization. "Jing, listen to my explanation." Lin Tian stood beside Fu Jing and tried to explain, but Fu Jing kept a straight face. She had heard of Lin Tian's romantic affairs before this, but who would have imagined that he actually had so many lovers? How long had it been since he debuted? Lin Tian tried to persuade Fu Jing for a while, but she still didn't say a word. He had no choice but to throw a pleading look at the girls behind him. All the girls looked up at the sky. It would be best if Linger, who grew up with Lin Tian but was not related by blood, took the initiative to run over. Big Sister Fu, Big Sister Fu. The little girl Ling ran to Fu Jing's side and pulled her sleeve. "Can you say something? If Big Brother Lin Tian does anything wrong, Ling, it will help you beat him up." Being persuaded by a little girl in such a soft and cute tone, Fu Jing couldn't keep a straight face anymore. She could only say gloomily, "This playboy, you guys are just going to let him bully you like this?" Ling said with a red face, "There's nothing we can do. Big Brother Lin Tian is so powerful. That's why so many big sisters like him." Fu Jing felt like she was defeated by her naivety and couldn't say anything for a while. Seeing this, Lin Tian hurried over and said with a smile, "Jing, let's not talk about this first. According to the news, that Gunnan is just ahead. We'll help you vent your anger first." Speaking up to this point, even the women behind Lin Tian came forward. "That's right, that Gunnan, or whatever it is, he even dares to bully our sisters. He's really tired of living. Big Brother Lin will definitely teach him a good lesson. That's to say, our sisters can only be bullied by our own family." At the headquarters of the White Mist, the commander who had condensed for the 9th time was no longer in his original human form. Instead, he had transformed into a giant sandworm. After being attacked by Gunnan 9 times in a row, the commander finally couldn't take it anymore and revealed his bloodline body. For a bloodline carrier, this was their most powerful move. Every time it was used, it consumed a lot of energy, and it couldn't be used for a long time. It had to kill the enemy quickly. However, These restrictions corresponded to the super powerful bloodline body. Die. A voice mixed with a roar came over, and Gunan could barely make out what he was saying. What followed was an earth-shattering sandstorm. Under the control of the commander, every grain of sand carried an astonishing amount of energy. If it hit an ordinary person, it would be enough to leave a bloody wound. But in such a sandstorm, Gunan still stood unmoving. Shadow bodies couldn't exist in the sandstorm at all. They would be destroyed as soon as they appeared. Such a large-scale attack could indeed restrain Gunan's shadow body substitution. But how much power do you have left to control the sandstorm with all your strength? Gunan sneered at the commander and walked forward step by step. The sandstorm blew against his face, blowing out fine beads of blood, but it couldn't stop his steps. Cannot. The sandworm commander's 12 pairs of compound eyes stared at Gunan. Seeing him slowly approaching, the fear in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Even the strongest sandstorm couldn't destroy this person's body. What was his body made of? The sandworm's entire body rose up, and it let out a roar. The sandstorm between heaven and earth grew stronger. At this time, even Gunan's flesh was being scraped away. With every step he took, pieces of flesh would fall off his body. When he reached the commander, his face was almost left with only bones. But even with such a skull, the corners of Gunan's mouth that hadn't completely fallen off still showed a sneer, and his mouth opened and closed. If his vocal cord were still there, the words he would say would be, "Come on, face it head on." The sword pierced through. The sandworm, who was using its full strength, couldn't dodge and could only take the sword head on. It let out a cry of pain, but this was just the beginning. The second sword, the third sword. At some point, the sandstorm had gradually stopped. There were hundreds of holes in the sandworm's body, but Gunan was still tirelessly stabbing. The praise of dawn began to take effect. The flesh on Gunan's body gradually grew back, and he felt itchy. He reached out and scratched his face, but he grabbed a lump of flesh and threw it aside in disgust. The commander on the ground had long stopped moving, and Gunan didn't seem to notice until a weak voice sounded beside him. "Sir, he's already dead." Gunan suddenly turned his head and saw a slender woman standing there, wearing a similar mask on her face. Chapter 115. The yellow sand that filled the sky had already fallen, and the first commander's corpse had returned to human form. This proved that the blood descendants were still human, and the bloodline progenitor was just a form of transformation. Flesh was continuously growing on Gunan's face, and the outline of a human's face could already be seen. However, this made him look even more terrifying. "Looks like you don't intend to avenge him." Gunan turned his head and looked at the figure wearing the queen mask. His vocal cords had only grown halfway, so his voice sounded very strange. The queen, second commander, did not seem to mind at all. He bowed and said, "I wouldn't dare." A strange smile appeared on Gunan's broken face. "The Sand King is dead." In the boundless void, 6 figures landed in different directions. The heavenly mystery path master, who was dressed like a scholar, suddenly opened his eyes and spat out these 4 words with a solemn expression. "I thought that the 2 sides would reconcile, but I didn't expect this to be the result." The Dragon Phoenix Path Master also sighed softly. The 6 Path Masters had gathered here, and each of them had their own sources of information. It was just that they had received the news from the White Mist headquarters slightly later. For people at the level of a Path Master, if they intentionally paid attention to a certain place, it was very difficult to hide anything from them. The Sword 1 Path Master, Fu Yang's expression was gloomy. Why are these 2 so impulsive? With both of them injured, are they going to let Lin Tian take advantage of them again? When the Heavenly Mystery Pathmaster had given Gu Nen the address of the White Mist, he had done a simple check on both sides and discovered that there was no obvious enmity between them. They had thought that even if it was just a small conflict, the 2 sides would not go to the extent of fighting. Once Gu Nen entered the White Mist, Lin Tian's enemies would be even greater. Who would have thought that this would be the outcome? The 6 present did not dare to say that they would definitely win against the first commander of the White Mist. Even if Gu Nen could kill him, he would definitely be heavily injured, Could it be that Lin Tian's power of providence had some kind of mysterious effect again? As the initiators of the Children of Providence, the six of them had seen this situation many times. It was originally a situation of certain death, but these Children of Providence had forcefully created a path for themselves. After all, fate was not something that could be completely controlled by humans, so they could do nothing about it. The six of them fell silent. In the end, it was the heavenly secret pathmaster who spoke. Lure Lin Tian away for now. I'll go see that Gunan again. It wasn't easy to get a good target, so I can't let it go to waste. At the headquarters of the White Fog, after being ravaged by the great commander's true body sandstorm, there were only a few intact buildings left. It was a scene of ruins. The people in the white mist began to come out one after another, clearing away the rubble and debris, and began the reconstruction of the headquarters. In a palace deep within the headquarters, Gunan sat high above, looking down at the people below. At this time, his body had completely returned to normal, as if he hadn't gone through that battle. There were only two people standing below. One of them was naturally the second commander, the Queen, and the other was Elder Qin. Never in his wildest dreams would Elder Qin have imagined that this would be the final outcome. He lowered his head and looked at the second commander's back. The doubts in his heart could not be dispelled. It was a good thing that Gunan had suddenly come knocking on their door, while the commander was in seclusion at the headquarters. But who would have thought that the great commander would actually be killed by the other party? At that time, it was clearly the second commander who appeared and ordered them to stop cooperating with Gunan. Why did she? Moreover, the second commander is rarely at the headquarters, so why did she appear at this time? If she was already here, why didn't she make a move earlier? Elder Qin quickly retracted his gaze and tried to stop himself from continuing to think, but his mind refused to listen and continued to think on its own. Elder Qin passed down the order that no one is allowed to spread what happened today. The second commander's voice successfully brought Elder Qin's attention back. He quickly straightened his body and replied, "Yes." He raised his head, but whether it was the second commander or Gunan, who was sitting high on the throne, none of them had any intention of looking in his direction. They just turned and left. After Elder Qin's figure completely disappeared, Gunan sat high above with an inexplicable smile on his face. I should have known that Third Tail's appearance was too strange, and that woman called Six-Tail from the 66 Amaterasu branch had a strange attitude. So you were the one behind it. Gunan had always had a good memory. His encounter with Third Tail back then was just an accident, but the latter took the initiative to be his maidservant with the purpose of joining the White Mist organization. The logic behind it was slightly far-fetched, but Gunan did not think about it at that time. Now that he thought about it, he felt that something was amiss. There was even a woman named Six Tails who had appeared in the Bloodkin branch on planet TNI. Her attitude was also bizarre. What she said at that time seemed more like she was trying to sow discord instead of resolving the conflict. Now that he thought about the similar names of the two of them, as well as the similar aura of the second commander in front of him, some things became clear. Indeed, I can't hide it from you, sir. The second commander chuckled and took off the mask on his face. Under the mask was a beautiful face that actually resembled Lin Yunyan. Gunan raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, "Who is Lin Yunyan?" "My daughter," the second commander answered without hesitation. Gunan was instantly amused and thought to himself, it turns out that Lin Yunyan is the second commander's ultimate goal. Perhaps the moment Third Tail discovered Lin Yunyan, she came up with this series of plans. You people just like to make things so troublesome. Gunan waved his hand and said, "You can just say that you want to exchange the heads of Lin Yunyan and the sandworm for the translation method of the world mission. Wouldn't that be the end of it?" Indeed, the reason why Gunan and the second commander could sit down and talk was that the latter had promised a hand over what Gunan needed. The second commander merely smiled without saying a word. Only those who had absolute power could use such a straightforward method, and the rest could only use their brains. However, what Gunan said was right. As the two parties of the deal, she would get Lin Yunyan and the White Fog after the death of the senior commander, while Gunan would get the translation method he wanted. Gunan did not think much about it, and simply stood up slowly. "It's your turn to fulfill your promise," The second commander nodded gently and turned to walk out of the door. Please follow me. When Gunan and the second commander walked to the door, he suddenly asked, Are Third Tail and Sixth Tail your clones? How many tails are you? It's more appropriate to say that they're reincarnations. Our clan is the same, and they didn't notice it themselves. As for me, the second commander chuckled. She smiled flirtatiously and turned around slightly. You can call me Red Tail, sir. Gunan turned to look, only to see a red fox tail swaying up and down behind her. Hence, he nodded expressionlessly and said, That's Big Tail. What is this calculation based on? The second commander was startled and asked in confusion. Chapter 116. The golden light was still moving forward on the ring of stars. Lin Tian and his women were about to reach the headquarters of the White Mist. However, right at this moment, one of the women suddenly frowned and hurriedly called for Lin Tian to stop. Bingyu, what's wrong? Lin Tian turned around and looked at the woman who spoke. Bingyu was one of Lin Tian's women. She was also a student of Tianji Temple. She was the grand disciple of Tianji Temple. She used to have a high position in Tianji Temple. There's new information in the temple. Gunan and the Sand King of the White Mist were both injured. They have left the White Mist. Bingyu's face was cold. It was as if she never had any expression on her face. Only when she looked at Lin Tian did she look gentle. Luckily, Sister Yu is here. Otherwise, we would have wasted our time. Ling patted her chest and smiled. They would never have guessed that we have a spy like Sister Yu. Because of Bingyu, they were able to learn where Gunan was and the latest information on the land. Bingyu was sincere to Lin Tian. She would never lie to them. But they did not know that while Bingyu was trustworthy, what she knew might not be true. Reading the will of the world and showing us what they need us to do is a process called translation. Following the will of the world can give us feedback from the origin of the world. Most of the time, it is a direct display of the rules. It is very beneficial to us. Red Tail's gentle voice kept echoing. Gunan was reading the information in his hands and listening to her. Who do you mean by us? Gunan suddenly interrupted her. Of course, it is people like us who are one step away from breaking the world. Red Tail looked at Gunan with surprise. She did not understand why he would ask that. In her eyes, Gunan was only half a step away from that level. How could he not understand how beneficial the direct display of rules could be? Gunan noticed her surprise and could only roll his eyes secretly. He leveled up by his sin value. Since when did he need to comprehend the laws by himself? Combining Red Tail's words and the information in his hands, Gunan had a general understanding of the will of the world. Acting according to the will of the world would allow one to obtain the gift of the world. This was not a strange thing. In fact, the saying of doing justice for the heavens had been around for a long time. During the primeval times, there was once a cultivator that obtained a gift from the Heaven Tao because his actions coincided with the Heaven Tao, causing his cultivation realm to rise rapidly, and he was said to possess great virtue in the world. Blessings were not true in modern times, but the existence of the will of the world was not to be false. Translating the world will, to put it bluntly, was to seize the initiative as the manifestation of the world will. No matter who completed the task, the world would give feedback to the person who translated. Gunan understood it with the logic of the game. The world quests were like a quest hall, and the translator would find and accept quests. The number of tasks might be large, so they told others about them and hired others to do them for them. The person who translates the will of the world is called a prophet or a teacher, but in most places, there's a common name. Red Tail looked up and said, Skywalker. The person who carried out the will of the heavens was Skywalker. Gunan nodded. What is your translation method? Give it to me. Gunan merely treated the previous events as a quest plot. What he was really concerned about was the translation method. Red Tail did not waste time. She gave Gunan another set of information and said, It is about how to become a Skywalker. The information itself is not valuable. It is the experience and power that is difficult. Gunan raised his head and glanced at her. Then, he went back to reading the information. This was because it was clearly stated at the very beginning of the information. To become a Skywalker, one had to be an experienced leader. They had to know their own rules. It was best to be a break world-class cultivator. That was because any translation method was based on the cultivator's understanding of the rules. They had to understand the will of the world and translate the world's mission. The white mist translation method was called white mist mirror. It created a mirror covered in white mist and projected the will of the world onto it. Then it searched for it. White mist mirror was a high-level translation method. Even the name white mist came from it. Interesting. Do you have a finished fog mirror? Gunan asked Redtail with an interested smile after reading the information. Yes. Redtail was prepared, so she nodded. In the white mist, there were only her and Sand King, two skywalkers. There was an extra fog mirror. Redtail took out a mirror that was the size of a palm and gave it to Gunan. The mirror was covered in a thick layer of white mist. No one could see the truth behind it. At the same time, Redtail took out another fog mirror. There was only half of the white mist left. That was the fog mirror that Redtail used. In the area where the white mist was gone, the mirror showed a bright, starry sky. It was so deep that it could make people lose themselves in it. Redtail stroked the mirror and said, "Use your rule power to slowly erode the mist. Then you can—" Huh? Before she could finish her sentence, she saw Gunan's face was expressionless. Shadow powers came out of his hands and washed away the mist on the mirror. Although there were still some stubborn elements remaining, Gunan had already washed away more than 80% of the fog in an instant. This! Redtail's eyes almost popped out of her head. She had seen other Skywalkers, and she had seen people who could translate faster. But those were break-world elites. She could not help but raise her head to look at Gunan. This young man had been severely injured by the Deep Sea King not long ago. Now, he was only a thin piece of paper away from break-world class. Gunan did not care about what she was thinking. He used his soul to quickly scan the surface of the fog mirror. Many world missions appeared. Some are complicated, and some are simple. Some came from a famous big dimension, and some had never been heard of. But in the end, there were hundreds of missions in front of Gunan. Gunan let out a heavy breath. Ever since Red Carp and Land Marigold, he had been looking for a way to translate world missions. His long-awaited plan had finally come to fruition at this moment. Even with Gunan's calmness, he could not help but look happy. He was a player. He could ignore the emotions of the NPCs, and he could ignore the life and death cycle of monsters. He could only focus on leveling up and completing missions. Chapter 117. The reason why professional players were professional players was that they would not let their emotions get to their heads. They always had a clear line of thought. How do I make the fog mirror? Gunan did not even look at the translated mission and asked directly. The mission was there and would not run away. Only the method of making the fog mirror was what Gunan needed the most right now. This was the only missing link in his entire translation process. The fog mirror is the carrier of the world will. Different translation methods have different production methods for this kind of carrier. Redtail explained to Gunan. Following her introduction, Gunan also learned how to make the fog mirror. Speaking of which, this was related to the Children of Providence on the mysterious yellow planet. The main material for making the fog mirror was the accumulated providence of the Children of Providence. Using the providence to link the world will and engraving it on the mirror made of special materials was the basic principle of making the fog mirror. So, those Children of Providence were created by you? Gunan asked, a little amused. Of course not. Redtail shook her head. Providence is the foundation of making the fog mirror. We naturally have to find a way to hide it. How could we do it at our own doorstep? Gunan could not help but nod when he heard this. For a reincarnator, it was easy to find a small world and start collecting providence. Why take the risk and let others guess their purpose? However, the providence of the astral world is far stronger than that of a small world. So, that group of people could not resist the temptation and started experimenting on the mysterious yellow planet. As she said this, Redtail showed some mockery on her face. She then said, "Sir, you can find out about this matter and the materials needed for the fog mirror in the dossier." An hour later, Redtail had already gone to preside over the reconstruction of the headquarters. Gunan stood alone in the archives of the White Fog and flipped through the organized dossiers. It was not right to say that he was alone because there was someone beside him who helped him organize the dossiers, and it was an acquaintance. Perhaps Redtail considered that they were familiar with each other, so she sent Thirdtail over. When she was in 66 Amaterasu, she had a pure and innocent temperament, but she insisted on dressing herself up to be extremely flirtatious. Now, she was barefaced and looked like a girl next door. "Sir, the information you wanted." The girl next door's forehead was full of cold sweat. It was as if she was standing on a stove. She did not dare to stop for even a moment and looked for something to do. "Yes." Gunan casually took the file, and then he said with a smile, "Stop wandering around and sit down. I'm almost done." Third Last's face turned pale, and he trembled as he sat down. He didn't even dare to look at Gunan. She was indeed extremely afraid. After all, she had seen Gunan's ruthlessness. Now that she had bumped into him in the white fog, there was nothing more terrifying than this. Back in 66 Amaterasu, when the other party's life and death were unknown, he had abducted Lin Yunyun and betrayed him. But at that time, who would have thought that this person would actually be able to kill his way into the white fog and directly kill the great commander? From the looks of it, he's probably going to enter the white fog. At the thought of this, Third Last's mind went blank, and she felt that her future was going straight to purgatory. However, Gunan looked at her in amusement. According to Redtail, Third Last was her reincarnation and her soul foundation was connected. Hence, she could easily influence Third Last's actions. However, Third Last clearly didn't seem to have noticed it at all and thought that she was an independent entity. Such a method was truly terrifying to think about. However, Gunan didn't care about it. Be it Third Last or Lin Yunyun, their so-called betrayal was meaningless to Gunan regardless of their identities. Gunan would never take the initiative to help any NPC and would only lend a hand for quests. Hence, he had nothing to do with anyone in this world. He would not consider other people's feelings, nor would he ask for anyone's loyalty. After all, in the game world, the players had long gotten used to such things. It was not easy to rescue an NPC, but one day, the party might end because of a plot. Third Last was just a trivial matter. Gunan was most concerned about the Son of Providence now. It was written very clearly in the dossier of the White Fog that the method of gathering Providence was leaked because of an accident 50 years ago. An important member of the White Fog died outside the White Fog, and that person happened to be returning with the collected Providence. In the end, he was discovered by 6 nearby Tao Lords. After that incident, Sons of Providence began to gradually appear on planet Shinwan. Clearly, the Sons of Providence were created by the 6 Tao Lords. The dossier of the White Fog also recorded the information of the 6 Tao Lords, as well as when and where they created what kind of Sons of Providence. Among the various Sons of Providence, the 2 most typical ones were naturally listed in the information: Yichun, Lin Tian. Looking at the 2 familiar names, Gunan almost had the urge to laugh out loud. It seemed that no matter which world it was, the main characters were always similar, and the supporting characters were different. "An uncle!" A stuttering voice rang out. It was Lin Yunyun who was standing at the door. She lowered her head and said, "The second commander invites you over." Gunan nodded and stood up. He also wanted to ask Redtail some things in person. When he passed by Lin Yunyun, he stretched out his hand with a smile and rubbed Lin Yunyun's hair. He looked at her as if she was a lost puppy that had finally returned home. When he returned to the hall that the Sand King had built for himself, Redtail was already waiting there. The first thing she said to Gunan when she saw him surprised the latter. "The Heavenly Secret Pathmaster is here." "The Heavenly Secret Pathmaster? I remember he's also among the 6 Tao Lords, right? How dare he come here?" Gunan said in amusement, as if he was laughing at the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster's overconfidence. However, Redtail said seriously, "Among the 6, the other 5 are all good-for-nothings who have lived comfortably for a long time. They have great ambitions but little talent. Only the Heavenly Secret Path cannot be underestimated." "Oh." Gunan raised his eyebrows and recalled his meeting with the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster. However, He did not feel that there was anything special about it. The Heavenly Secret Path Master practically wrote the word expert on his face, but he did not seem to be very intelligent. As if she could read Gunnan's mind, Redtail said, "What's written on your face may not be true, nor may your way of doing things. If it wasn't for my other clone being there, I wouldn't have known." This side she was referring to was naturally the side of the 6 Lords. Gunnan was slightly taken aback by her words, but then he nodded solemnly. "That makes sense. It looks like we need to find a way to test him and see if this Heavenly Secret Path Master is really an expert." Ow! Redtail furrowed his brows. The Heavenly Secret Path Master's actions were watertight. If he did not want to reveal himself, who would be able to test him? She had made a similar attempt before, but it had all been futile. Gunnan did not explain further and asked directly, "Where's the Heavenly Secret Path Master? Just let him come in." A moment later, the Heavenly Secret Path Master, who was dressed like a scholar, appeared and slowly walked into the palace. His face still had the appearance of an expert. Redtail did not look at him. Instead, she turned to look at Gunnan. She was very curious about how Gunnan was going to test the other party. Gunnan only revealed a faint smile. No one could tell what he was thinking. The Heavenly Secret Path Master walked to the palace and gently opened the fan in his hand. Just as he was about to speak, he saw that Gunnan had suddenly disappeared from the throne. A blood light had already flashed. It was Gunnan with the blood knife in his hand. He directly chopped down. Chapter 118. In the hall in the depths of the white mist, the sudden flash of blood light not only stunned the Heavenly Secret Path Master, but also stunned Redtail. No matter how one looked at it, Redtail and the Heavenly Secret Path Master could be considered smart people. However, the smarter they were, the more they thought about it, and the more they could not understand Gunnan's mental circuitry. However, at the very least, they understood one thing. Gunnan really wanted to kill the Heavenly Secret Path Master, and he did not hold back at all. When the blade light fell, the Heavenly Secret Path Master did not seem to move. However, when the blood blade was about to touch him, the blade struck his left side. Redtail looked at him with a solemn expression. She had never seen the Heavenly Secret Path Master make a move, so she was secretly wary of his move. As the dignified second commander of the White Mist and a blood descendant who had lived for hundreds of years, Redtail's knowledge was not shallow. However, she could not see through the Heavenly Secret Path Master's move. He didn't dodge. It's not space, not an illusion, and definitely not a substitution technique. Redtail stared at the Heavenly Secret Path Master's movements and muttered to herself in a low voice, full of doubt. Gunnan's simple blade was unavoidable, but the Heavenly Secret Path Master had used an unknown method to make the blade miss. It gave people the feeling that he should have been there all along. The Heavenly Secret Path Master's expression did not change, but a hint of a smile flashed in the depths of his eyes. If it was so easy to see through, then the word Heavenly Secret might not be too cheap. Causality skill? Gunnan stopped moving and spat out these 5 words, appearing to be a little surprised. The causality skill was a strange law that was based on cause and effect. It was not very powerful, but its application was very ingenious. For example, now that the Heavenly Secret Path Master said that the blade would not hit him, no matter how Gunnan's blade fell, it would not hit him. When the Heavenly Secret Path Master heard this, he almost staggered and fell to the ground. He looked at Gunnan as if he had seen a ghost and was momentarily speechless. Gunnan put away the crimson knife and nodded encouragingly. If you can awaken a rule related to the law of causality, you'll be considered to have obtained the certificate of a fraud. How did you know? The Heavenly Secret Path Master had never seen anyone who could guess his background with just a glance. Gunnan just smiled and shook his head. If he had to say what he was most familiar with in this world, it wasn't the dungeons of the games in his previous life, nor was it the secrets of the gods. It was the power system here that was similar to that of the games. From Transcendent Rank 3 onwards, one's understanding of the laws and the construction of their own rules were things that were overused in the game. Causality rules sounded very powerful, but it was only common in the game. Every skill had its advantages and disadvantages, and causality was no exception. However, It was true that this skill was suitable for him to be a con man. So Gunan recognized the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster's qualifications as a con man. When the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster didn't get an answer and saw Gunan put away the crimson knife, he couldn't help but ask, "Mr. Gu, you don't want to kill me?" Gunan didn't care about the strange way the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster called himself. Instead, he said with a strange expression, "There's no enmity between us. Why would I want to kill you?" Even with the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster's shrewdness, he was choked by his self-righteous words. "Now you know that there's no enmity between us?" Gunan ignored his attitude and said bluntly, "I'll just call you Heavenly Secret. Forget it. That's not very civilized. Why are you looking for me?" The Heavenly Secret Pathmaster looked at him deeply and restrained his emotions. He regained his calm expression and said, "Lin Tian is an old friend of Fu Jing. I'll let you know." The Heavenly Secret Pathmaster left very quickly. This owner of the law of causality seemed to have purposely come to take a stab and tell Gunan some unimportant news. Then, he hid his achievements and fame. It's hard for outsiders to know the outcome of the battle between Master and the Sand King. Perhaps the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster is here to test the waters. Redtail thought of this immediately. Maybe. Gunan smiled and didn't seem to care about this. "Go fetch someone for me. Her name is Lan Si. You should be able to find her, right?" Redtail smiled. "Of course. We've known Master's whereabouts since he set foot on this planet." "That's good." Gunan stood up and was about to leave the hall, but after some thought, he sat down again. "I'll stay here from now on. You can leave." This hall reminded him of the empty heretic god's temple. He suddenly wanted to stay here for a long time. Redtail looked at him strangely, but didn't say anything. She had seen too many of her master's strange hobbies when she was still a little fox. However, just as she was about to walk out of the hall, she suddenly turned around and asked, "Master, what is the law of causality? Specify a rule and give it the highest priority." "This is the law of causality," Gunan explained casually. As if afraid that Redtail wouldn't understand, he added, "For example, if you put on a pair of black-rimmed glasses and a set of red clothes, then you'll only have a minute of 59 seconds. Gunan didn't pay too much attention to the Heavenly Secret Pathmaster and the law of causality. After reading the dossier carefully and completely understanding how to make a fog mirror, he finally took out the fog mirror impatiently and carefully looked at the mission on it. This fog mirror was given to him by Redtail. He had used his shadow power to disperse most of the fog. The Heretic God's Temple was a very honest game system. Once his sin points reached a certain level, the realm and power provided to Gunan would be the most standard of that level. He was currently at 300 points in esoteric level, which meant that he was at the 3rd level. No one could be closer to the 4th level than him. It was also because of this that the mist on the mirror seemed so fragile in front of him. Gunan used his divine soul to slowly look at each mission on the fog mirror. At the same time, he was constantly making notes and writing down the mission's content and requirements. Different from normal Skywalkers, who would look for simple missions and hand them over to their subordinates or personally complete them, Gunan specifically looked for missions that were on a large scale. Those small missions that only gave a few points of sin points were nothing to Gunan. What he wanted was at least on the scale of the immortal and demon world. This fog mirror had probably been cleared by Gunan by 90%, but there were only a few dozen missions on it. Based on this estimate, the entire fog mirror should only have around 50 missions. Gunan spent another hour to get rid of the remaining fog. He also translated the mission information and listed it on a piece of paper. There's a total of 52 missions. If I sort them out according to the planes, I've got them. Gunan compared the information of the mission plane one by one and finally found a suitable target. The Morningstar plane was a medium to large plane with many downlords. Not only did the scale meet Gunan's requirements, the level of power was just right. Just as Gunan was about to look at the details of the mission, a figure suddenly barged into the hall. It was Redtail. She rushed in without even greeting him, and her expression didn't look too good. The moment she arrived, she said, "My lord, there's been a change in the situation." Gunan unhurriedly put away the paper and said calmly, "Is it Lan Si's situation?" Chapter 119. Planet Xianwang, Tang Clan. Young Master Lin, this woman called Lan Si was brought here by a junior of my clan. This old man doesn't know her exact origins. An old man in embroidered clothes stood before Lin Tian and complained incessantly. This person was the person in charge of the Tang clan here, the Tang clan's patriarch, Tang Bo. And next to him and Lin Tian, Lan Si was sitting innocently. Before Lin Tian could speak, the women behind him had already surrounded them. "You're just going to let a woman of unknown origins into the clan? You don't know? Where's that Tang Xian? Ask her to come out and confront us." "That's right. If Gunan doesn't come back, then apologize to our big sister Jing on his behalf." Apologize. Apologize. In the face of the siege of more than a dozen beautiful girls, Tang Bo could only respond with a wry smile, one by one. As he apologized, he felt extremely aggrieved in his heart. When had he, the dignified patriarch of the Tang clan, experienced something like this? It was strange because he'd always been strict in managing the clan, and there were very few situations where his servants bullied others. But today, there were two ignorant fellows who actually ridiculed Lin Tian at the entrance of his clan. How could such a thing happen? If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, even Tang Bo wouldn't believe it. But it had already happened, and his clan had inexplicably offended a Dao Lord just like that. Fortunately, Tang Bo reacted quickly, and after understanding the situation, he immediately asked Tang Xian to leave while he brought Lan Si to deal with them. All right, don't bully the Tang clan's patriarch." In the end, Lin Tian clapped his hands and signaled for the women to withdraw, and only then did the Tang clan not become a marketplace. However, such an uproar caused the relationship between Fu Jing and the women to improve greatly, and they even started to address each other as sisters. Even Fu Jing herself didn't know why she, who was originally resolutely opposed to men being fickle, seemed to have inexplicably accepted these sisters. Lin Tian walked over to Tang Bo and said, "Patriarch Tang, I know this matter has nothing to do with you, and I only came to look for Gunan." Tang Bo seemed to heave a huge sigh of relief and said gratefully, "Thank you for your understanding, young Master Lin." At this moment, Lan Si added, "If you're looking for him, then it has nothing to do with me. How is it none of your business?" When Fu Jing heard this, she immediately rushed forward angrily. "You're in cahoots with Gunan." Previously on Starship, Fu Jing had seen Lan Si and Gunan together. "Jing, listen to me," Lin Tian said with a serious expression. "We will only kill the leader of the evil. We must not harm the innocent. This Lin does not respect the heavens and earth in this life. I only seek to have a clear conscience." As Lin Tian spoke, 9 illusory golden dragons circled around him. It was as if a dragon's roar could be heard, and his body suddenly grew much taller. In the eyes of the crowd, there seemed to be a faint golden glow around him. He did not look like a mortal, but like a deity or a Buddha. Big Brother Lin Tan, Big Brother Lin. All the girls looked at him with yearning in their eyes. Even Fu Jing was immersed in this atmosphere. Her good impression of Lin Tian gradually turned into an inexplicable sense of worship. Tang Bo, who was at the side, was also secretly shocked. In his perception, Lin Tian's image was raised once again. He could not be offended, but gradually, he had to curry favor with him. Only Lan Si was not affected. After all, she had Godhead. She only looked at Lin Tian curiously. However, just as Lin Tian's domineering aura was released, and everyone's attention was focused on him, a figure walked in unhurriedly. He completely ignored everything and arrived in front of Lan Si. "Let's go," this person said to Lan Si. He did not even look at Lin Tian. His movements were too natural to the point that Lin Tian and the others did not react. It was only when Lan Si obediently stood up and started to walk out that Fu Jing cried out in surprise. He's Gunan." "He is?" Lin Tian was stunned. He looked at the ordinary young man in front of him with some doubt. He was already used to his opponents being tall and handsome young geniuses. Moreover, they were all arrogant and prideful, giving people the desire to beat them down. However, this guy in front of him did not give people any interest in challenging him. He doesn't look very powerful. Among the girls, a tall and slender girl smiled and said, "Sister Jinger, sister will help you teach him a lesson." As she said that, she shouted at Gunan, "Hey, Gu something, you bullied our sister Jinger. If you can take a flying knife from me, I'll forgive you. How about that?" Fu Jing was a little anxious when she heard that. Linger smiled and said, "Sister Jing, don't be anxious. Sister Ming, Zhu comes from a family of throwing knives. Even transcendents have to be careful with a flying knife." As if to confirm her words, Ming Zhu did not wait for Gunan to reply. She raised her hand and threw a flying knife. This knife was as fast as lightning. It went straight for Gunan, but the latter did not make any movements to dodge. Ming Zhu already had a smile on her face. However, the next moment, her expression suddenly changed. A white light flashed. The flying knife flew back at a speed several times faster than before. "Be careful," Lin Tian bellowed. However, he was not known for his speed. By the time he flew towards Ming Zhu, it was already too late. The flying knife pierced right between Ming Zhu's eyebrows. The girl who was originally smiling like a flower had died with her eyes wide open. No! Lin Tian's eyes were wide open. Tears of blood almost flowed out of his eyes. He hugged Ming Zhu's body tightly with both hands and roared towards the sky. "Sister Ming Zhu! Sister Ming Zhu!" All the girls cried out in sorrow. Ling Er, who was the first to follow Lin Tian and had the best relationship with the girls, was already crying bitterly. When Gunan saw this scene, he seemed to have thought of something. He asked Lan Si, who was beside him, "Is that Lin Tian?" "Yes." Lan Si nodded her head and took 2 steps back. She felt that a huge battle was about to erupt. Gunan understood. So this was the son of luck. He was the kind that could make half a fog mirror. The way he looked at Lin Tian changed. Lin Tian's hands trembled. He slowly put down Ming Zhu's body and stood up. He stared at Gunan. The veins on his face popped out. He said word by word, "I want you to pay for her." But before he could finish, Gunan's blood blade had already arrived. The scarlet blade aura directly sent him flying. He crashed into 3 tall buildings of the Tang family. Big brother Lin Tian. Ling Er's big tears flowed down. She quickly rushed towards Gunan. "You? I'll fight it out with you." What welcomed her was naturally a blade aura. Thus, the cute little Ling Er died on the spot. Ling Er, Bing Yu cried out in sorrow. She leaped into the air and started to frantically activate the innate qi in her body. She raised both her hands up high. A huge yin-yang fish appeared above her head and started to revolve at high speed. The last move of the heavenly secret strategy. Forbidden technique, reverse the sky, swoosh. With a slash of the blood blade, she along with the yin-yang fish were sliced into 2. This disciple of the heavenly secret dojo did not even have the chance to finish reciting the name of the move. Other than Ling Er and Bing Yu, Lin Tian's dozen or so female friends, upon realizing that Lin Tian's life was in danger, all of them unleashed their trump cards. Hidden weapons, poisons, firearms, illusions. All sorts of moves were used. It was too much for the eyes to take in. Lin Tian's Crystal Palace contained more than 80% of the continent's techniques. Unfortunately, all of them were useless in front of Gunan. No matter how many tricks you had, no one could block a blood blade. In the blink of an eye, the corpses of the dozen or so beautiful girls were lying on the ground. Other than Ming Zhu, who was killed by the flying blade, none of them had a complete corpse. Those who died under the blood blade were at least missing an arm or a head. Most of them were directly sliced into 2. Among the beautiful girls, only Fu Jing was left. She was the latest to join the Crystal Palace. Her fear of Gu Nan was also the deepest, so she did not have the courage to step forward. Her face was as pale as paper as she watched Gu Nan walk towards her step by step. Her legs went weak, and she actually collapsed to the ground. Lin Tian, who had been sent flying by the blade, finally regained his senses. He stared at the long wound on his chest and rushed back to the battlefield. However, what he saw made him furious. His dozen or so female friends had been turned into a pile of dismembered corpses. Ah! Lin Tian roared in pain. He charged at Gu Nen like a crazed demon and punched him without holding back. His 9 dragons body-tempering art was pushed to the limit. His physical strength had almost reached the limit of transcendence. The power of his punch could almost kill a Tao Lord. However, he was facing Gu Nen. Gu Nen did not need to be almost. He was the limit. Gu Nen's blood blades circled around, and Lin Tian's entire right arm was cut off. Blood spurted into the sky. However, Lin Tian was not dejected. Instead, he laughed wildly. Die. Go to hell. It turned out that his right arm, which had been cut off by Gu Nen, had not stopped at all. It still carried an unparalleled might and the 9 true dragons circling around it. He had used the price of losing an arm to exchange for a chance to hit Gu Nen. Bang! This punch landed heavily on Gu Nen's shoulder. A dull sound rang out. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. Lin Tian stared at Gu Nen. However, the latter did not show any signs of falling. Thus, the wild laughter on his face gradually froze. After a long while, Lin Tian's severed arm fell to the ground. Gu Nen stretched out his hand and rubbed the place where he had been hit. He muttered to himself, "The main character template is really powerful. It hurts a little." As he said this, shadow power surged out from his body and completely enveloped the stunned Lin Tian. It directly suppressed the power in his body and sealed his 5 senses. Gu Nen still wanted to bring him back to the white fog and use his karmic luck as a fog mirror. Of course, he could not let him die. At this moment, a voice came from the sky again. "Mr. Gu, please wait. This Lin Tian has been chased by us for a long time. Can Mr. Gu hand him over to us?" Chapter 120. Fu Yong's face was filled with complacency. Even though it wasn't his idea to make Gu Nen and Lin Tian fight, he felt honored as well. He'd seen Lin Tian's final attack, and no matter how strong Gu Nen was, how could he not be injured after taking that punch head-on? Even if Lin Tian was at his peak, they would only need 3 people to take him down. Now that Gu Nen was injured, and the 6 of them were here, how could Gu Nen still have the strength to resist? Fu Jing, who was lying on the ground, seemed as if she'd seen her savior, and she immediately pounced over. Father, I'll definitely listen to you in the future." She hugged Fu Yong's arm, and her face was filled with the joy of surviving calamity. Little girl, now you know to look for your father?" Fu Yong snorted lightly, and he spoke stiffly, but he'd already pulled her behind him. After all, she was his daughter, and Fu Yong couldn't bear to see anything happen to her. At this moment, Gu Nen had already passed Lin Tian, who'd lost an arm and had been completely sealed by him, to Lan Si, while he held the crimson saber and walked forward. Naturally, the 6 Tao Lords were in front of him. Fu Yong watched as Gu Nen walked over slowly, and the crimson saber was still flickering with crimson light, and his expression gradually sank. "Does Mr. Gu really want to go against us?" Fu Yong spoke in a low voice, and he thought that Gu Nen hadn't figured out the situation. "Forget it. Allow me to introduce you. This is the Dragon and Phoenix Tao Lord, and this is..." He just pointed at the Dragon and Phoenix Tao Lord when he saw Gu Nen suddenly raise his saber, and his figure even split into 6, and the 5 pitch black figures did the same thing. "You..." Fu Yong glared furiously, but he deserved to be called the Sword Tao Lord, and he still drew his sword from his waist at the critical moment to block the crimson saber. However, he'd never imagined that Gu Nen would possess an unparalleled advantage when facing a Tao Lord like him who was skilled in attacking. The peak realm from the evil god's temple allowed his absolute strength to stand at the peak of stage 3, and the crimson saber gave him extreme offensive power. If it was an expert with strange abilities like the heavenly secret Tao Lord, it would be very difficult for Gu Nen to kill him in one strike. However, people like Lin Tian and Fu Yong were his favorite opponents. Under the crimson light, Fu Yong's sword was directly cut into 2, but it only managed to block the crimson saber for a moment. The first Sword Tao Lord didn't even get a chance to grunt before he was cleaved in 2 along with his sword. The next moment, Gu Nen's figure instantly turned dark, and the black shadow next to him turned into Gu Nen's figure. This process was repeated many times until all 6 slashes were made by Gu Nen himself. After the dazzling one blade, 6 slashes, Gunan stood still again, but he didn't feel any mental pressure. Is it because his soul is strong that his mental strength is also strengthened? My previous life was just a game after all, and the player's mental strength was still at the level of an ordinary person. Gunan rubbed his chin as he pondered. In front of him, 5 corpses that had been cut in 2 slowly fell to the ground. Among the 6 Tao Lords, only the heavenly secret Tao Lord was still standing. There wasn't even any hint of surprise on his face, as if everything had been within his expectations. Gunan didn't even look at the 5 corpses. It was just as Redtail had said, the 6 Tao Lord were just 5 pieces of trash apart from the heavenly secret Tao Lord. They had been immersed in a comfortable environment for too long. Aside from Fu Yong, the others couldn't even react to Gunan's slash. Fu Yong could barely draw his sword, but he still couldn't escape the fate of death. This was also one of the reasons why the evil god of agility pursued extreme speed. No matter how strong one was or how high one's realm was, as long as one's mind was relaxed, one could be killed in one strike. Clap, clap, clap. The heavenly secret Tao Lord lightly clapped his hands, and when his folding fan collided with his palms, it made an extremely distinctive sound. You killed Tao Lords like pigs and dogs at the age of 19. I don't think it will be long before the Shanghai Pavilion sends you a star seal, he said to Gunan. The Shanghai Pavilion Star Seal. Gunan had heard of this before. As the largest public organization in the Central System, the Shanghai Pavilion didn't just make a star list. They also invited all the Break World elites in the galaxy to join them. Their invitation was a star seal that was made of special materials. Gunan didn't bother talking to him. The heavenly secret Tao Lord had sent 5 Tao Lords to their deaths. Gunan didn't mind killing them. Let's go. He patted Lan Si's shoulder. Lan Si, who had just woken up from a dream, quickly followed. Wait! A low voice sounded. It was Fu Jing, whose face was as pale as ash. She walked in front of Gunan, and her expression changed. She gritted her teeth and said, You killed Lin Tian. You killed my father. Why don't you kill me as well? There was a flash of blood. Gunan used the blood knife that he hadn't yet put away to slash. Fu Jing's head flew into the air. Gunan didn't mind satisfying an NPC who came looking for death. Deep in a white mist, Gunan quietly stood in the hall. He watched the scene unfold with interest. It had been 3 days since Lin Tian had been captured. After Gunan returned to the white mist from planet Shinwang, he had been preparing. He had also been learning how to make a fog mirror. Gunan didn't care what the 5 Tao Lords were going to do. He didn't care what the heavenly secret Tao Lord wanted. Players didn't care about what NPCs wanted to do. They only cared about their own quests. Lin Tian was still covered in shadow power. The 9 golden dragons in his body could only curl up in a corner when faced with Gunan's shadow law, not daring to move at all. This is the array for sacrificing the power of Providence. Redtail drew an extremely complicated array, then wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, Things related to Providence were indeed very complicated. Not only the array itself, but there were also a lot of supplementary materials. Fortunately, it was in the white mist. Otherwise, it would be troublesome for Gunan to collect them himself. Perhaps Redtail was also taking this opportunity to show Gunan the value of the white mist and herself. Otherwise, with her understanding of Gunan, he would probably give up on the white mist at any time. Redtail guessed correctly. It was the complicated process of making a fog mirror, as well as the difficulty of collecting and processing the raw materials, that made Gunan decide to completely control the white mist and manage it as his own force. From tomorrow onwards, support a shell organization on the mainland. It will be the identity of the white mist. Gunan said to Redtail beside him, Don't arrange too many of your own people. If necessary, just throw them away like white gloves. Yes, sir. Redtail looked at Lin Tian, who was lying quietly in the array, and revealed a smile. Gunan then said to Lan Si, You'll be the leader of the shell organization. I've never done this kind of thing. Lan Si couldn't even speak clearly. She didn't expect that she would be involved. You'll be doing this kind of thing in the future. Gunan smiled and patted her head. Chapter 121. The power of destiny in Lin Tian's body was channeled out and successfully made into a new fog mirror. There weren't many problems during the process. With a new fog mirror in hand, Gunan wasn't in a hurry to translate it. Instead, he began to work on reincarnation. Yes, after a long period of recuperation, Gunan was finally going to restart his reincarnation. Lan Si was already working hard on her cultivation, and Gunan's sin value had been rising to 325 points. However, there was no limit to a person's desires. In the past, he'd dreamed of earning sin points while lying down, but now he felt that it was too slow and insisted on completing missions. Of course, in order to accumulate enough points to advance to the 4th rank, he had to continue reincarnating. If not for Lin Tian's matter, Gunan would have started reincarnating a few days ago. He'd found a rather suitable mission on the first fog mirror. The reincarnation formation on the ground slowly lit up, and Gunan stepped into it. His body was placed in the void, and his soul was gradually drawn out, entering another world. External mission accepted. Mission objective: kill the son of Moon Slave. Mission reward: average. The long-awaited mission information slowly appeared in the evil god's temple. Gunan's lips curled into a smile. This mission was practically tailor-made for him. The Morningstar plane was slightly smaller than the world of immortals and devils, but its strength was much higher. There were even figures at the level of a Dowlord. The size of the plane determined that the rewards would not be small, and missions that involved killing targets were Gunan's favorite. Missions with clear objectives like killing or seizing certain treasures wouldn't waste too much time. At the very least, it was much better than the world of immortals and devils. If it was a large-scale mission like the war between good and evil, it would inevitably take up a lot of energy. The mission to the Morningstar plane this time was extremely good. The only bad thing was mighty spirits slumbering in the river of time. Please respond to my call. After a long series of prayers, a blue door began to appear in front of Gunan's divine soul, and Gunan stepped out. The next moment, he appeared in a classroom of a school. Beneath his feet was a formation with strange patterns, and in front of him was a girl with a dull expression. According to Gunan's understanding of the Morningstar plane, this was probably his parasite. The Morningstar plane was a very special plane. The laws of reincarnation here were different, and the reincarnated ones would not immediately take over the host's body. Instead, they would exist in the form of heroic spirits. This seemed to be a kind of spontaneous protection for the native life forms. Not only would the reincarnators not kill the parasites, but they would also protect them. This was because once the host died, the heroic spirit of the reincarnated host would dissipate, and the reincarnation would immediately end. Not long after Gunan appeared, the formation beneath his feet started to glow. The light pillar beside him turned from red to blue, then to white. It was so bright that it was blinding. Oh my God, Lin Duo, you summoned a king-class heroic spirit. It's actually a king-class heroic spirit? As expected of Miss Lin Duo, I'll have to work even harder. Duo, we're so close. Can you let me touch your heroic spirit? The meaning of the blinding white light caused everyone in the classroom to burst into cries of alarm. The girl in front of Gunan was even being shaken by her companions by the arm. As the person who had summoned Gunan, Lin Duo had not expected that she would actually summon a king-class heroic spirit. This was a big shot equivalent to a 3rd rank. This girl with a round face and a few freckles on her cheeks was at a loss for a moment, not knowing what to do. Gunan had long since understood the laws of this plane from the information he had obtained from White Mist. He said expressionlessly, "My name is Gunan." As soon as Gunan's voice fell, the surroundings immediately burst into cries of alarm. Wow, a heroic spirit with intelligence at that. As expected of a king-class existence. Yes, he looks so handsome. I also want to have such a heroic spirit. In fact, Gunan's face was still the same, looking ordinary and not at all handsome. But this was the style of this plane. The whole world followed suit, and Gunan had long heard of it. In the end, it was a person who looked like a teacher who appeared and clapped his hands to signal everyone to be quiet. He then turned to Lin Duo and said, "Lin Duo, don't be nervous. Just act like you're in class." Lin Duo, who had received encouragement from the teacher, gritted her teeth and stepped forward. "Mr. Gunan, it's nice to meet you." Gunan only nodded indifferently. He needed to play the image of a cold, heroic spirit so that it would be convenient for him to do his own missions in the future. The classroom began to quiet down. Everyone stared at Lin Duo and Gu Nan with curiosity in their eyes. Even the teacher was the same. This was a king-class, heroic spirit. Even the second-rank powerhouses might not have seen one before. Who would have thought that a student who was still in high school and coming into contact with a heroic spirit for the first time would be able to summon it? But he was not too surprised. The summoning of a heroic spirit was a probabilistic event. It was not like this had never happened before. Everyone's stares made Lin Duo even more nervous. She even stuttered a little. "Mr. Gunan, I am Lin Duo. I'm a student at Imperial City No. 4 High School. My hobby is I'm just a heroic spirit. I don't care about your hobby." Gunan frowned slightly and interrupted her. "Ah, I'm sorry." Lin Duo's little face instantly turned red, and there was a burst of laughter around her. Gunan shook his head slightly and walked out of the array. His body gradually solidified and was no longer a pure white spirit body. There was even a suit that automatically appeared on his body. What a considerate rule. Gunan could not help but mutter. Now, Gunan had inherited a part of his original body in terms of strength, speed, and rule. He looked no different from a human. Heroic spirit was a local term. In essence, it was more like an individual that was directly shaped by the rules. Like the major elemental creatures, it was a rule creature. It was not the same as the heroic spirit that Gu Nan had previously understood. It did not refer to the soul of a dead person, but a special existence that was between reality and illusion. Ordinary heroic spirits often had strong obsessions when they descended and needed the summoner to help them fulfill their wishes. Gunan's gaze swept across the classroom. Some people lowered their heads, while others looked at him curiously. But none of this had anything to do with him. His gaze finally landed on Lin Duo. This was the girl who had summoned him. At least for this period of time, he had to ensure that she was alive. Chapter 122. Lin Duo was indeed in trouble, and it was a matter of life and death. A female high school student like her should not have encountered such trouble. Hearing Gunan's words, Lin Duo's face flashed with panic, and she shook her head to deny it. The teachers did not seem to have any suspicions, or perhaps it was the appearance of the king-level heroic spirit, Gunan, that attracted most of their attention. Half an hour later, Lin Duo stood alone in the corner of the school field, while Gunan stood quietly behind her in a gray suit. "Mr. Gunan, how did you know I was in trouble?" Lin Duo had a serious expression on her face. "There's something unclean on you." Gunan didn't even bat an eyelid as he casually answered her, but his gaze was sizing up the surroundings with interest. This was the capital's No. 4 high school, so the field was mostly filled with high school students. All of them had youthful faces, but they were surrounded by valiant spirits with different appearances. Some were humanoid, some had the appearance of a beast, and some were even a sword. A little girl skipped past him, and a scimitar swayed behind her. This strange scene happened in front of Gunan, but the people around him did not find it strange at all. The heroic spirits were the core of this continent. Almost the entire power system here was built around the heroic spirits. Even the natives did not call their world Morningstar, but directly called it the heroic spirit continent. From personal cultivation to combat, and even to the wars between forces and nations, hundreds of millions of heroic spirits played an important role in all of this. Gunan's words made Lin Duo feel a chill, as if it reminded her of a terrifying experience. What is it?" The girl's lips were pale, and her voice was trembling. "Just some tricks, not worth mentioning." Gunan did not pay much attention to it, and instead asked, "Have you heard of the Moon Slave, or the son of the Moon Slave?" Gunan's mission was to kill the son of the Moon Slave, and this mission was divided into 2 steps: find the target and kill the target. Lin Duo looked confused, and then shook her head. Gunan did not think that she would lie, and could only sigh inwardly as he considered looking for information elsewhere. The flow of time in the Morningstar plane and the astral realm was about 15-1. Gunan had set aside a month for himself, so he could stay here for more than a year. Right at this moment, two black-clothed men quickly walked over and arrived before Lin Duo. "Miss Lin, about that matter, what do you think?" One of the two men, a bald man wearing sunglasses, said expressionlessly. Lin Duo was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "That's something my grandfather left behind. I won't sell it to you no matter what." The bald man in black didn't mind. He just smiled and said, "Then Miss Lin, please think about it for a few more days." He put on the black round hat in his hand and said, "Our Heavenly King group never forces anyone to buy or sell. Miss Lin can rest assured about this." Seeing this, Gunan just watched. Since Lin Duo did not say anything, he would not be a busybody. Gunan just watched. Since Lin Duo didn't say anything, he wouldn't be a busybody. However, since there were no clues for the mission, Gunan chose to lie low for the time being, not wanting to expose himself too early. However, there were no clues about the mission at the moment, so Gunan chose to hide for the time being. He did not intend to expose himself too early. In the quiet library, Gunan was flipping through an ancient book unhurriedly, a stack of books in front of him. "Mr. Gunan, the information you wanted is here." Bang! Lin Duo pouted as she placed the heavy book in her hand on the table. Her face was full of dissatisfaction. Heroic spirits were supposed to assist the heroic spiritualist's growth in battle, so why was it the other way around? However, Lin Duo was just an ordinary high school girl, and her personality was not tough. She could only sulk in her heart. However, Gunan ignored her and continued to read through the information on his own. Compared to the mission to find the Eye of Max, it was much smoother this time. The term Moon Slave was easy to find clues, or rather, it was a famous story that could be found even in an ordinary high school library. Moon slaves were one of the famous heroic spirit kings in ancient times, but they had not appeared in the world for a long time. Not many people knew of them now. However, it was easy to find information about them in ancient books. Elves are natural heroic spirits. They should be unique to this plane. Gunan frowned, making a judgment on the so-called Moon Slave. Heroic spirits were unique to the Morningstar plane. Most of them were not reincarnated, but rather native or foreign powerhouses, a projection of some intense will. For example, there was a Grandmaster of the Way of the Sword who could not reach the pinnacle of the Way of the Sword in his entire life. A strand of his will was chosen by the Morningstar plane's will, and a heroic spirit descended. This heroic spirit was based on the Sword Dao Grandmaster, but there was no conscious connection between the two. Even their personalities were different. The heroic spirit only inherited the Grandmaster's will towards the Way of the Sword. Its knowledge and intelligence were incomplete, but it was likely to be stronger in terms of swordsmanship. Other than these heroic spirits, there was another type of natural heroic spirit. Natural heroic spirits belonged to the category of living beings. Not only were their minds complete, but they could also cultivate and grow on their own. For example, moon slaves and reincarnated heroic spirits like Gunan. Gunan put down the information in his hands and slowly stood up. This was only a high school library after all, and the information on moon slaves was limited to this. There was no more detailed information. Seeing him stand up, Lin Duo revealed a puzzled expression. Done reading? Gunan nodded lightly. What's the matter? A blush appeared on the girl's face, and she seemed a little bashful. The school is holding a heroic spirit competition the day after tomorrow. Can you participate with me? The Heroic Spirit Master Competition sounded like a competition that both the summoner and the heroic spirit participated in. Sure, Gunan replied casually. He was not pressed for time in this reincarnation, and he did not mind doing some unrelated things. Moreover, as a summoner, Lin Duo might have a side mission on her. It was not easy for him to reincarnate once, and it would be a waste if he only did a main mission. After agreeing to Lin Duo's request, Gunan left quickly. He only left a sentence for Lin Duo. Summon me if you encounter anything bad. Heroic spirits could summon heroic spirits back to their side. This was common knowledge in the Morningstar plane. Where are you going? Lin Duo hurriedly asked, but Gunan's figure had already disappeared. Chapter 123. Under normal circumstances, heroic spirits would naturally follow the heroic spirit master. Many heroic spirits did not have enough intelligence and had to be controlled by the heroic spirit master. Once they were far away, they would fall into a chaotic state. However, heroic spirits like Gunan were different. His actions were not controlled by the heroic spirit master. In fact, he could even control the heroic spirit master. After all, in this world, the one with the biggest fist had the final say. Gunan had not inherited all of the main body's power yet, but he was comparable to an ordinary Tao Lord. Moreover, he did not lack any techniques, which was enough for him to do whatever he wanted. He turned into a shadow and quickly moved forward. Soon, he arrived at a corner and happened to block two figures. They were the men in black who had spoken to Lin Duo earlier. "Big brother, are we really not going to use force? Young Master Han doesn't have much time left for us," the other man said to the bald man anxiously. The bald man was very calm. He pursed his lips and said, "Our identities are different now. We work for the Heavenly King Group. How can we just waste our time like before?" As he spoke, he revealed a cold smile. "Don't worry. Master Zhang's heroic spirit has already stopped on that girl for 7 days. We'll be able to reap the benefits soon." "Master Zhang," the person next to him cried out in alarm, then hurriedly covered his mouth. It was as if this name represented something terrifying, and his expression was very frightened. The bald man nodded solemnly. In the next moment, the two of them turned a corner and found that a figure was already blocking their way. This person was not tall. He wore a gray suit and was expressionless. However, the bald man's expression suddenly changed. He clearly remembered that this person was standing beside Lin Duo just now. "Who are you? Lin Duo's matter has nothing to do with you. You'd better." Before the bald man could finish speaking, he suddenly felt a pain in his heart. He hurriedly looked down and saw that the other party's hand had already pierced into his heart. In the next moment, his heart was directly crushed. Gunan slowly withdrew his hand. There was not a single trace of blood on his hand. All the blood was left in the man's body. The scene was extremely strange. "Where is Master Zhang?" Gunan's cold gaze fell on the man beside him. Before this man was just a hooligan who worked for his big brother. He had never seen such a scene before. He was so scared that his face turned pale. "I don't know. I really don't know. Big brother, don't kill me." Gunan lifted his leg and kicked. The man's right leg bone instantly made a kacha sound, and in the blink of an eye, it broke into 2 pieces. The pain coming from his leg made the man want to cry out in pain, but the shadow power instantly stuck in his throat, making it impossible for him to make sound. Gunan looked at him condescendingly. "If you don't know, then die. Think carefully before you speak. You only have one chance." By the time he could speak again, the man was already in tears. He said repeatedly, I know. Master Zhang met us in a bar. I'll take you there." In the evening, in a small bar called Night, Gunan sat alone in a private room. There was a glass of fruit wine in front of him, but he had not touched it. A moment later, the man in black who called himself Yi Dong limped in. "Sir, Master Zhang said he'll be here soon." Yi Dong walked to Gunan's side with a smile and bowed. Gunan just nodded lightly and said casually, "What's this Master Zhang's background?" Gunan had already asked Yi Dong and his big brother why they were looking for Lin Duo, but he couldn't get an answer. He was the young master of the Heavenly King Group, and he wanted to buy something from Lin Duo. They were just following orders. The reason why Gunan came to them was that he wanted to solve Lin Duo's problem. After all, this was his summoner. Gunan didn't want to be forced to return to the astral world because something happened to Lin Duo when he went out to search for clues. It would be too unreliable to keep Lin Duo by his side. Gunan didn't have many ways to protect people, and others weren't fools. Once their relationship was exposed, it wouldn't be difficult to kill Lin Duo. The soon that Yi Dong said was indeed a short while. A moment later, someone pushed open the door of the barroom. Yi Dong's expression changed when he saw who it was. He quickly stood up and said, "Young Master Han." Gunan looked up and saw that the person who walked in was a young man in casual sportswear. His appearance was quite outstanding, and he fit the standard of a tall, rich, and handsome man. After young Master Han came in, he didn't even look at Yidong. Instead, he smiled at Gunan. "I'm Han Feng. How should I address you, sir?" Gunan didn't answer him. Instead, he asked, "Where's the person I'm looking for?" Han Feng didn't care about his rudeness. He said indifferently, "With your strength, Master Zhang wouldn't dare to show up like this." This young Master Han Feng of the Heavenly King group wasn't stupid. It was unusual that Yi Dong suddenly contacted Master Zhang instead of the bald man. Then, after investigating the two's movements, they easily discovered the bald man's corpse and the terrifying aura left behind by Gunan. It's very likely to be a powerhouse at the third stage. Master Zhang made such a judgment, which made Han Feng and the others fall silent. No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't understand why there would be such a powerful expert interfering with a mere Lin duo. However, Han Feng wasn't someone who could be frightened by a mere aura. He decided to meet the other party in person. Gunan's dangerous gaze fell on Han Feng. The latter felt a chill run down his spine. He couldn't help but believe Master Zhang's judgment. However, since he dared to come like this, he naturally had something to rely on. "Sir, you have to think carefully," Han Feng said loudly, as if to embolden himself. "Master Zhang's spirit is hiding in Lin Duo's body. I'm afraid you've also discovered this, right?" From the first time Gunan saw Lin Duo, he knew there was something dirty in her body. However, it was different from a species he knew before. It turned out to be a spirit. Han Feng deliberately mentioned this in hopes that the other party wouldn't take action. As long as this person wanted to protect Lin Duo's life, he wouldn't dare to fall out with them before meeting Master Zhang. As expected, Gunan fell into silence after he finished speaking, and this caused a smile to appear on Han Feng's face once more. "Sir, why are you looking for Lin Duo? Why don't you tell me? We might have a chance to cooperate." Like before, Han Feng grabbed his opponent's lifeline and started his negotiation. "As long as we can reach a consensus, Master Zhang will naturally show up." However, he hadn't expected that Gunan's hand would suddenly stretch out in the next moment and twist his head. This young Master Han Feng, who was equivalent to an inborn powerhouse, had his head twisted 180 degrees. His eyes stared at Yidong, who was behind him, causing the latter to scream in fear. Chapter 124. At the moment of Han Feng's death, in a bungalow near the bar, an old man with a face full of wrinkles suddenly opened his eyes and blurted out, "Go, go." The young man next to him was stunned. "Master, where are we going? Are we not going to wait for young Master Han?" The old man was the Master Zhang that Yi Dong and the others were talking about. He said with a gloomy face, "Han Feng is dead. Go now, we can't hide here for long." The young man's face turned pale when he heard the news from his master. He did not dare to say anything else and quickly packed up his things to leave. After the young man left in a hurry, Master Zhang calmed down a little, but his face was still pale. He did not expect that person to be so decisive to kill someone without saying a word. Was he not afraid that he would hurt Lin Duo? Or was he wrong, and the person did not care about Lin Duo's life? It was not impossible, for example, if the person also wanted that thing. How could I let you get what you want so easily? Master Zhang's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. "I'm back." A gentle voice came from the door of Lin Duo's house. Lin Duo had already returned home, and it was her sister, Lin Ko. "You're back." Lin Duo had a listless look on her face as she walked out of the kitchen. She had a piece of toast in her mouth, but when she opened her mouth, the toast fell out. Lin Ko looked at her silly sister with a smile and patted her head. "Where's Mom and Dad?" They called and said they won't be coming home tonight. Lin Duo took another bite of toast and stared at Lin Ko. "Sister, I'm hungry." Lin Ko rolled her eyes and said helplessly, "I'm going to cook now, right? Didn't you want to perform spiritual awakening today? Did you succeed?" Normally, a first-year high school student like Lin Duo would initiate her first heroic spirit summoning in school. This process was called spiritual awakening. Not everyone could succeed in spiritual awakening. Only those who were talented and diligent could easily summon a heroic spirit, and the success rate was only about 1 in 5. Speaking of heroic spirits, Lin Duo suddenly became excited. Of course I succeeded, and I summoned a king-level heroic spirit. King level? Lin Ku's eyes widened. She couldn't help but wonder if she had heard wrong. She wasn't like her younger sister, who was still in high school. As a second-stage heroic spirit master, she deeply understood the meaning of the word king level. The world's top heroic spirits not only represented endless glory and glory, but also unimaginable power. If it wasn't for the fact that heroic spirits couldn't be stolen or transferred, perhaps it would have represented a disaster. What about your hero spirit? Lin could quickly ask. Lin Duo hesitated. He's busy with something. Hearing this, Lin Ku's gaze became strange, as if her sister had said something stupid. You mean your hero spirit didn't follow you? It can't be a scam, right? Her sister's strange tone made Lin Duo angry. Mr. Gunan is a very powerful person. Lin Ku could only shrug helplessly. The two agreed that if there was a chance next time, they must let her sister meet Mr. Gunan. Lin Duo pouted and went upstairs. Lin Duo sat alone in the room and muttered, Mr. Gu Nan is a king-level heroic spirit, and she recalled the words Gu Nan said to her when he first arrived. Is it something bad? Lin Duo sat in front of the table and took out a small box from her drawer. Then, she stared blankly at it. This box was something she accidentally found when she returned to the ancestral house last time. Beside the box, there was a note left by her grandfather. Lin Duo couldn't understand the words on the note, and she also couldn't find a way to open this box. It was only a few days ago that a few people suddenly came to her door and wanted to buy the box in her hands, which made her interested. Lin Duo's gaze stopped on the box. She felt that the box was gently shaking, but it seemed like it was just an illusion. She felt that her head was a little heavy, and there was a faint murmur beside her ear. Let me out. Let me out. Lin Duo was so scared that she quickly threw away the box in her hands. Only then did she realize that her back was already soaked in cold sweat. A light breeze blew past, causing her body to feel cold. Lin Duo swallowed her saliva and could not help but take a deep breath. It was like this last time, but there was no strange sound. As she thought of this, she felt the coldness behind her getting heavier and heavier. She subconsciously turned around. The scene behind her made her feel a chill from her tailbone to the back of her head. It was a woman without facial features. Her head was lowered, and she was standing in front of her. Ah! Lin Duo screamed and threw something over. She turned around and wanted to run out the door. But when she turned around, she saw that it was still that faceless woman. But this time, she was not standing upright, but hanging upside down from the roof beam. Her messy long hair was hanging down, revealing a face that was as white as paper. Lin Duo almost felt suffocated. She felt that her consciousness was constantly being eroded and becoming blurry. Fortunately, her remaining consciousness reminded her of what Gunan had said before he left. She used the last of her strength and began to call for her hero spirit in her mind. As a hero spirit, she could accept the summoning of a hero spirit and directly return to the ladder's side, but the price was much more than ordinary teleportation. Ordinary hero spirits could not afford such a price at all. Only someone with power like Gu Nan could afford such a squandering. The faceless woman slowly floated closer and was almost in front of Lin Duo until a hand reached out and grabbed her neck. Gunan's figure slowly walked out of the void and grabbed the faceless woman's throat with one hand. The latter began to struggle violently. Her figure suddenly became blurry, but soon became clear again. She kept changing like this. The whole scene looked more like she wanted to turn invisible and leave, but Gunan had grabbed her life, and she could not escape. Mr. Gunan, Lin Duo was relieved. She quickly got up from the ground and hid behind Gunan. Who is she? Person? She's not a person. Gunan replied casually. The reason why he did not directly break her neck was also because of this. Since she was not a person, the throat was naturally not a vital point. However, Gunan's words made Lin Duo's face turn pale again. She stammered. Not a person, could she be? Gunan turned around and saw Lin Duo's trembling appearance. He lifted the faceless woman in his hand. The blank face was almost touching Lin Duo's face. Ah! The girl screamed. Chapter 125. Mr. Gunanyu, you're too much. Lin Duo's eyebrows were almost knitted together as she stared at Gu Nan fiercely. Her face was flushed with anger. Gunan curled his lips indifferently and sat on the chair in front of Lin Duo's desk. He threw the faceless woman beside him. She lowered her head and did not dare to speak. This was Master Zhang's heroic spirit. It already had some basic intelligence, but it was far from being able to act on its own. Therefore, as long as Master Zhang wanted to protect his heroic spirit, he had to come here. A heroic spirit of this level could not bear the cost of returning to the heroic spirit. Seeing that he did not speak, Lin Duo could only hide in a corner and sulk. However, she could not hold back her curiosity and ran to the faceless heroic spirit. Fear came from the unknown. After knowing that this was just a weird-looking heroic spirit, Lin Duo was not afraid anymore. In terms of appearance, there were many monsters among the heroic spirits. She was definitely not one of them. Lin Duo, who was full of curiosity, saw that the faceless heroic spirit did not dare to move, so she stretched out her finger and poked her featureless face. Ah, it's very bouncy. Lin Duo seemed to be pleasantly surprised. The faceless heroic spirit was controlled by Gu Nan and naturally did not dare to resist. Since she did not have a face, she could not make any faces to scare Lin Duo. She could only draw circles in resentment. Faceless monsters, a rare type of heroic spirit. Their faces are the best defensive weapons and can absorb most of the damage, Gunan explained. He did not read those books in a library for nothing. As he spoke, he casually raised his hand, and a pitch-black sword flew out and directly entered the faceless heroic spirit's face. The faceless heroic spirit seemed to be whimpering, but no one knew where it came from. The part that was pierced by the small sword oozed some light, blue, crystal-clear liquid. It did not look scary, but it was somewhat beautiful. The pitch-black sword gradually turned into a black shadow and dissipated. The faceless heroic spirit's wound also quickly healed as if it had never been injured. Only a few drops of blue liquid on the ground showed what happened just now. Lin Duo's mouth twitched. She no longer had any interest in studying it and quickly let go. A moment later, Gunan slowly opened his eyes, lifted the faceless monster with one hand, and said to Lin Duo, "I'm going to meet someone. See you the day after tomorrow." Ah, see you the day after tomorrow. Lin Duo had yet to react and spoke subconsciously. Gunan's figure had already disappeared without a trace. At this time, there was a light knock on her door, and then her sister Lin Ku's head popped in. "It's time to eat, silly sister. Why is your room so messy?" Lin Ku looked at her in confusion. Lin Duo screamed as she realized what she had neglected. She actually didn't call her sister up and let her meet Mr. Gunan. Night had fallen. Gunan carried the faceless monster with one hand and leaped from roof to roof. Only when he passed by a house did he suddenly stop. With a leap, he broke through the roof and landed inside the house. Master Zhang, who was in the room, was watching all of this with his mouth agape. "You?" He watched as Gunan landed expressionlessly and grabbed his faceless hero's spirit with one hand. He hurriedly said, "Sir, please have mercy." He jumped up and quickly said, "I'm Zhang Ibai. I'm here to deliver information about the Heavenly King Corporation's Han family to Sir." A faint smile appeared on Gunan's expressionless face. "You're a smart person. Tell me." Hearing Gunan's words, Zhang Ibai finally let out a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He knew that in front of a truly powerful person, begging for mercy or threatening them were meaningless. Only by saying something that interested them would he be able to survive. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't bear to part with his hero's spirit, he wouldn't have come here hoping to get lucky. In the end, he was captured before he could even show his face. In half a month, it will be the Heavenly King Corporation's Spirit Master Han Jun's 70th birthday. Han Feng wants to buy the thing in Miss Lin Duo's hands to prepare a birthday gift for his grandfather. Zhang Ibai used the simplest words to explain Han Feng's purpose. Gunan frowned and asked, "What is that thing in Lin Duo's hands?" Zhang Yibai carefully looked at him and said in a low voice, "It's a young natural hero's spirit." A flash of understanding flashed in Gunan's eyes. He then nodded lightly. Natural heroes' spirits were very rare. Correspondingly, most of them were very powerful and could be considered a valuable commodity. But how do you know that Lin Duo has this thing? Gunan asked. I'm not sure about that. Zhang Yibai shook his head. Seeing Gunan frown, he hurriedly said, but the Han family definitely knows. Han Feng is also acting on his father's orders. Bring me there. Gunan casually threw the faceless monster to him and said. Zhang Yibai immediately agreed. His heart that was hanging in suspense was slightly relieved. In his opinion, he had passed this hurdle. At least the person in front of him would not easily take his life. This Master Zhang, who grew up in the slums, had always prided himself on knowing people's hearts. He had no enmity with this master. The one who had enmity with him was the Han family. As long as he was willing to help him solve the Han family's problem, he might even be able to benefit from this disaster. This was a big shot of the third rank. He was on the same level as the old man from the Han family. In the center of the city, in an elegant villa, a middle-aged man in blue and purple pajamas sat on the sofa. In his arms was a naked girl with light makeup. The girl stuck her body to the middle-aged man's hand and let him play with her. She smiled and said, Mr. Han, before she could finish. She was interrupted by a ringtone. It was CEO Han's phone ringing. Mr. Han, who was originally in high spirits, frowned when he saw the number displayed on the phone. He waved his hand and gestured for the girl to move away. The girl pouted unwillingly. She did not dare to say anything else. She just sat to the side naked. Mr. Han then picked up the phone. How is it, Zhang Yibai? Did you find Han Feng's whereabouts? Mr. Han asked directly after the phone was picked up. I found him, but Zhang Yibai's voice sounded a little hesitant. The situation is a little complicated. I'll tell you in person. Mr. Han was worried about his son. He was not in the mood to talk nonsense with Zhang Yibai. He said impatiently, Then what are you waiting for? I'm at home. He did not hear the expected response. There was a slight pause on the other side of the phone. Then, Mr. Han heard Zhang Yibai's strange words. Sir, it's confirmed. He's at home. Mr. Han was stunned. Before he could react, the window of his house shattered and two figures stepped into his house. One was a young man in a gray suit. His face was cold and expressionless. The other was Zhang Yibai, who had just spoken to him on the phone. Chapter 126. The pitch-black dagger sliced through the air. Before Mr. Han could even say a word, his throat was pierced by the dagger. His corpse slowly fell to the ground. Blood gushed out from his throat and soaked the luxurious carpet on the floor of the villa. Zhang Yibai was stunned. He did not expect Gunan to act so quickly. He did not even have the chance to speak and did not even have the chance to show off in front of Gunan. He was even more puzzled. This lord seemed to be here to kill. What was his purpose? Whether it was for the natural hero spirit or for other resources, sparing Mr. Han's life for now would allow him to interrogate him for more information. As for the naked girl, she had already screamed. However, not long after she screamed, she covered her mouth tightly. She was afraid that Gunan would kill her as well. Gunan did not even look at the two of them. He walked into the villa slowly. With a flip of his hand, a small box appeared. This was Lin Duo's box. It was unknown when it was in Gunan's hands. When the box was in Lin Duo's hands, it would often emit an abnormal fluctuation, making people feel like something was trying to come out. However, when it was in Gunan's hands, it was extremely quiet. It was only when Gunan took it out that it emitted some fluctuation again, guiding Gunan in a certain direction. As expected, Gunan smiled. With his many years of experience in running dungeons, he knew that there might be a hidden mission behind anything unusual. Lin Duo's box was so obviously abnormal that it could not be hidden from Gunan's eyes. Therefore, he took the time to take the box and brought it to Mr. Han's villa. As expected, it reacted. Lord, Zhang Yibai saw that Gunan had no intention of leaving and could not help but feel anxious. We should leave quickly. There are still many experts hiding here. Before he finished speaking, another black light flashed and the same black dagger appeared on his neck. Zhang Yibai looked at Gu Nin in shock. He could not understand why Gu Nin would attack him. Was he not going to continue to deal with the Hans? Don't you need me to provide information? Even if he didn't need anything, he clearly hadn't shown any disloyalty. So why naturally, no one would answer Zhang Yibai's question. He wouldn't be able to find the answer even on the road to hell. Gu Nin didn't have any grudges with the Han family. He just wanted to kill everyone who knew about Lin Duo to ensure the girl's safety. As for Zhang Yibai, it was the same reason. Since it was useless and he knew of Lin Duo's existence, he should just die. Gu Nin's figure disappeared around the corner. The naked girl suppressed the fear in her heart, found a random piece of clothing on the ground, and hurriedly ran out. The thing that was calling out to the little box was also a box hidden in the deepest room of the villa. If not for the connection between the two boxes, it would not have been easy to find this place. Even if he could enter this room, it would be difficult to find the other box. However, Gu Nin would definitely not miss it, because the moment he stepped into the room, he frowned and slashed at a corner of the room. "Wait, don't do it, I'm on your side." A scream was heard, and a figure floated out. The word floated was appropriate because this was an old man with a head full of white hair. He only had the upper half of his body, and the lower half was a cloud of smoke. He was like a ghost in a comic book. This was a hero spirit, and it didn't belong to anyone. It was a special hero spirit that guarded the two boxes. As a hero spirit, Gu Nin was especially sensitive to hero spirits. When the two boxes came close, he could sense that the other was born from the other box. "You are the hero spirit of these two boxes?" Gu Nin asked the white-bearded old man as he held the two boxes in his hand. "That's right." The white-bearded old man raised his head and said, "I am the hero spirit of the Sun and Moon Magic Box." Sun and Moon Magic Box? Gu Nin frowned. He looked down at the two boxes. Although the two boxes looked similar, the patterns on them were different. Lin Duo's was probably the sun box. There was a picture of a rising sun on it. Seeing Gu Nin's expression, the white-bearded old man's expression became more dignified. "Young people these days are really impulsive. Why don't you come and help this old man up?" Gu Nin was still expressionless. He wasn't affected by the old man's words at all, but he gently raised his right hand. The white-bearded old man felt a suction force. His body quickly approached Gu Nin, and his neck was already gripped by his opponent's hand. "How do I open the Sun and Moon Magic Box?" Gu Nin's indifferent voice came. Although he was a hero spirit, the feeling of suffocation was real. The white-bearded old man was instantly annoyed. He felt a surge of anger rush to his head. "Is this the attitude you use to ask for help?" So he angrily turned his head and didn't answer, but he was sneering in his heart. The Sun and Moon Magic Box was a treasure that had been passed down for many years. Only by obtaining the recognition of the magic box in himself could one become the treasure's master and open the magic box. And this guy in front of him, a young man who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Gu Nin didn't have much of a reaction when he didn't get an answer. He was just asking casually to see if he could trigger a mission. He casually threw the old man to the side. He picked up the moon box from the villa and placed it in the palm of his right hand. Then he began to clench and exert force. The old man's hero spirit saw this scene and almost laughed out loud. This person actually wanted to open the Sun and Moon Magic Box with brute force. This was simply crack. A crisp sound came, and the old man's hero spirit's thoughts were instantly cut off. His mind went blank. Crack, crack. There were two more crisp sounds. Two cracks appeared on the moon box where Gu Nin's palm was, and they were still expanding. "No, please don't." The old man's hero spirit hurriedly floated in front of Gu Nin. His voice began to tremble, but he didn't know how to stop Gu Nin's actions. Naturally, Gu Nin completely ignored his words. The next moment, the moon box completely cracked. A wisp of smoke floated out and formed the figure of a little girl in midair. There was a pair of transparent wings on her back, and she lay flat in front of Gu Nin. And at this moment, the evil divine temple in Gu Nin's mind trembled slightly, and a piece of information was transmitted. Side mission: protect the twin heroic spirits, Sun and Moon Demon. Gu Nin instantly became spirited. He had gone through a lot of trouble to come here, and it was indeed not in vain. Lin Duo's strange ancestral box really had a side mission. Twin heroic spirits, Sun and Moon Demon. Gunan looked at the little girl in front of him and saw that there was indeed a crescent moon mark between her brows. Her body was also surrounded by a rich power of the moon. This kind of power was even purer than Yuqianling's. Chapter 127. Valiant spirits were a special product of the Morning Star plane. They had the characteristics of living beings and creatures of laws. Some could be revived, while others could reproduce naturally. Gunan's target for this side mission was the twin valiant spirits. They were almost no different from living beings. Gunan did not know who had forcefully sealed these two valiant spirits, even using a treasure like the Sun-Moon magic box. Anything that could give birth to valiant spirits was naturally a treasure. However, this was not important. Since the mission had nothing to do with the box, Gunan did not mind destroying it. Of course, Gunan did not mind, but there were others who did. The box was destroyed by Gunan with brute force, causing the white-bearded old man's figure sway. His entire body became illusory, becoming more like a specter. He trembled as he flew in front of Gunan, practically crying as he begged Gunan to stop. He even hurriedly opened the seal on the box. Since the white-bearded old man was willing to open the box, Gunan naturally had no interest in opening the magic box with his bare hands again. The moment the box was opened, smoke flew out as well, but this time it was more lively and intense. This time, a valiant spirit that looked like a little boy appeared in the air. He had already awakened and was staring at Gunan with a pair of large eyes. He stared at the two for a long time, finally confirming that Gunan was the one in charge. His small face tensed up as he asked, "Who are you?" "In a sense, I'm your father." When Lin Duo returned to her room, she was still filled with anticipation. She wanted to see if Gunan was already inside, waiting to give her a surprise. The answer was obviously that she was overthinking. "What? How can you say that you're my valiant spirit? How irresponsible." Lin Duo pouted and sat down on the bed indignantly. In the next moment, Gunan's figure slowly appeared in front of her, holding hands with a boy and a girl who looked like they were carved from jade. At first, Lin Duo was a little embarrassed. After all, it was better not to run into people talking bad about others. But soon, her attention was drawn away. "All right, but, love." After a loud roar, the two little friends quickly fell into Lin Duo's hands. Her exploding young girl's heart allowed her to explode with astonishing potential. They were their names. Lin Duo rubbed the faces of the two children and asked Gunan, "You can call me Moon, sister." Before Gunan could say anything, the little girl, Moon Demon, had already revealed a gentle smile. "Whoa, whoa, 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 your voice is so nice." Lin Duo couldn't resist the sun monster's charm. She looked at the sun monster and asked, "What about you?" The little boy, the sun demon, shook his head coolly and ignored her. Gunan answered for him, "Yeah." Lin Duo looked at him in a daze. She felt that something was wrong, but Gunan didn't give her a chance to say anything. He said directly, "They are twin spirits. Sign a contract with them." Gunan's main quest was to kill the son of Moonslave, and his side quest was to protect the sun monster. Before that, he had to ensure Lin Duo's safety. So he decided to let Lin Duo sign the twin spirits. This way, it would be convenient for him to protect both sides. When necessary, he could also sacrifice the spirit to protect Lin Duo. For experienced players, it was acceptable to sacrifice a side quest in order to obtain more benefits. Can it really be done?" Lin Duo said excitedly, as if she had been hit in the head by a pleasant surprise. A heroic spiritualist could sign a contract with more than one spirit, but it would definitely weaken the buffs they gave to the spirit. So, they had to obtain the consent of the spirit themselves. If the heroic spiritualist forcefully signed a new spirit, it could easily lead to the betrayal of the old spirit. As for Gunan, he didn't have this problem at all. He never expected Lin Duo to help him. Lin Duo was inexplicably excited about this. Not only did the twin spirits sound powerful, but she also had to sign them just because they looked like little boys and lowless. "Thank you, Mr. Gunan. You're such a good person." Lin Duo didn't forget to give Gunan a good person card her excitement. Gunan accepted it without hesitation. The sun monster pouted and said, "Is this silly big sister our contract partner?" Lin Duo's face immediately darkened. Luckily, the moon monster saved her in time. "Big sister, please take care of me in the future. Little girls are indeed cute," Lin Duo complained in her heart. But soon, she would find out that honest boys were cuter. Early the next morning, when Lin Duo brought Sun Moon Demon downstairs, her sister Lin almost ate her breakfast up her nose. What's going on? Who are they?" Lin pointed at her sister and said, "Lin Duo, how old are you?" They? Lin Duo was stunned and immediately realized that her sister had misunderstood something. Her face turned red. "Big sister, listen to me. They aren't." The sun monster still looked cool, but the moon monster tugged at the corner of her clothes. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Lin Duo was speechless. After leaving the sun monster to Lin Duo, Gunan left her house again. The mission to protect the sun monster did not specify a time limit. Based on Gunan's past experience, it was likely to continue until the end of the dungeon. His main mission was completed, or the dungeon was forcibly ended. There was no reward for failing the dungeon, so he could only think of a way to complete the main mission. The information that the main mission gave to Gunan was son of the moon slave. The moon slave had been found out to be an ancient heroic spirit, but what was this son of the moon slave? Was it a descendant of the moon slave or a heroic spirit related to it? Also, in the previous sun monster mission, there was also a moon monster. Could it be related to the son of the moon slave? All kinds of questions appeared in Gunan's mind. Without enough information, Gunan could not make any more judgments. He had to do a deeper investigation now. The moon slave spirit was found in the high school library where Lin Duo was. So Gunan immediately went to the major libraries in an attempt to find more clues. But to his disappointment, he did not find any new useful information. Perhaps the existing information about the moon slave was only at that level. There was no more in-depth information in other places. Just when Gunan was at a loss for what to do, a laughing voice resounded by his ear. "Sir, are you looking for the moon slave?" The guardian spirit of the sun monster box, the white-bearded old man whose figure was blurry, was carefully floating next to Gunan. The sun monster box was still in Gunan's hands. He had forgotten to return it to Lin Duo yesterday. Anyway, the latter's attention was on the sun monster, so she did not notice it. "You know about it?" Gunan raised his eyebrows and said, "It's passed down from ancient times, of course I know about it." Chapter 128. In a quiet mountain house on the outskirts of the northern part of the city, an old man slowly opened his eyes. His hair and beard were all white, but he was brimming with energy. His eyes contained a light that no one dared to look directly at. This old man was Han Jun. If anyone who knew him was here, they would definitely be shocked. This was the true master of the Heavenly King group, a super expert of the third stage. He was actually living in seclusion in a place like this. With his status, he could enjoy all the glory in the world, but he was willing to live like a monk in this mountain house. "Master!" A faint figure appeared behind Han Jun and reported in a low voice, "Han Yuntian and Han Feng are dead." Han Yuntian was Han Feng's father, Chief Han, who had died under Gunan's sword. He was also this old man's third son. But when Han Jun heard this news, his indifferent expression did not change at all. It was as if the person who had died was not his own son or grandson. "How did they die?" the old man asked calmly. The figure behind Han Jun gradually became clear. It was a wolf with a human body and a wolf head. It did not speak and only handed a report to Han Jun. Han Jun quickly scanned through, but his brows furrowed. Han Yuntian was found dead in his home. The killer did not find any clues, but from the aura left on the corpse, it was very likely a third-stage existence. I personally want to take a look. It might be a heroic spirit. The wolf head saw Han Jun's expression and added, "A third-stage heroic spirit?" Han Jun's expression became even more doubtful. This level of heroic spirit was even rarer than human experts. Even a king-level heroic spirit would find it difficult to grow to the third stage without dying. On the other hand, a heroic spirit master could borrow the power of many heroic spirits and take this step more easily. To be able to kill people in the city, It's definitely not a natural heroic spirit. How did these two pieces of trash offend an expert of this level? Han Jun said with a cold expression. He had many sons in his life, and even more grandchildren. He did not care if one or two died. But if they caused trouble for the family, then their deaths were truly not to be regretted. A heroic spirit would not kill people with such a purpose. There must be someone behind the scenes who gave the order. If even his subordinate's heroic spirit was so strong, how strong was the heroic spirit master? Although there were cases where heroic spirits were especially strong, Han Jun did not want to take the risk. Give the order to investigate this matter. He said coldly to the wolf head, I will go to the martyr's palace. If a king-level heroic spirit appears, it won't be able to hide from the mirror. The moon slave is a king-tier heroic spirit. If there really is a moon slave, you can use the mirror of heroic spirits to check. The white-bearded old man floated beside Gu Nan with a fawning smile. The martyr's palace had a martyr's mirror, but Gu Nan had never learned about it before. It was the old man who had told him about it. The martyr's palace was a special existence that could be understood as the Guild of Martyrs. Even Lin Duo's school textbooks were mostly written by the martyr's palace. It could be said that the martyr's palace was the absolute authority when it came to matters related to martyrs. On the other hand, the heroic spirit mirror was a special treasure. Every time it was activated, it required a hefty price, but its function was quite remarkable. It could be used to detect the location of a specific heroic spirit. The martyr, of the saints, of the saint of the palace. Star with soul. Gu Nan was quite satisfied after understanding the function of the martyr's mirror. Even though it was limited to a certain area, the martyr's mirror was exactly what he needed. If he could find the location of Moon Slave, would the son of Moon Slave be far away? He turned to look at the white-bearded old man whose body was about to turn illusory and said with a smile, Since that's the case, I'll take you to the martyr's palace. It can repair your body there, right? The old man was overjoyed and nodded repeatedly. He was advising Gu Nan because his situation wasn't looking good, and only the martyr's palace could save him. When Han Jun arrived at the martyr's palace, it was as lively as usual. It was a gathering place for many heroic spirits. Rarely seen heroic spirits appeared one after another on the martyr's palace. But with Han Jun's status, he naturally would not be with these people. Not long after he arrived, someone came out to welcome him. Elder Han, Lord Dongfang has been waiting for you for a long time. The person who welcomed Han Jun said, There was more than one martyr's palace in the world, and the person in charge of each palace was called the Lord. The lord of this martyr's palace was called Dongfang Qi, an old friend of Han Jun's. Han Jun was startled at first, but he soon reacted and shook his head with a smile. He didn't ask too much and followed the person in. As expected, he saw a gray-haired old man inside the palace. It was Dongfang Qi. Dongfang Qi waved his hand, indicating for the person to leave. He then said to Han Jun, I heard something happened to your family, so I knew you would come. What? Are you sure it's a heroic spirit? Han Jun didn't care about his son's death at all. Instead, he was more concerned about the enemy's identity. Dongfang Qi's expression gradually turned serious. Yes, and it's a heroic spirit we've never seen before. There were no clues about Han Feng's death, but Han Yuntian had died in his own home. There were naturally people from the martyr's palace to help investigate. Gu Nan's remnant aura was only a suspicion to the wolf-headed man, but it was irrefutable evidence in the eyes of the experts from the martyr's palace. Have you checked with the martyr's mirror? Han Jun couldn't help but ask. Not yet. Dongfang Qi shook his head. We can only check with the martyr's mirror after we've extracted its aura. Han Jun frowned slightly, but he also knew that this was a brand new heroic spirit. He had to use this method to locate it, so he could only wait patiently. Before long, the martyr's mirror hadn't even opened when a commotion came from outside. What's going on? Dongfang Qi asked with a frown. The palace attendant stopped by Dongfang Qi hurriedly bowed and replied, Reporting to the palace master, someone has brought a heroic spirit here to treat his injuries. It's a rare guardian spirit. Dongfang Qi was even more puzzled. Isn't this normal? What's there to make a ruckus about? Guardian spirits were rare, But this was a place where all the precious heroic spirits in the city gathered. It wasn't strange for a heroic spirit to appear here. The attendant replied with a wry smile. It's that person. His heroic spirit is clearly on the verge of death, but he doesn't care at all. It's a waste of a heavenly treasure in his hands. Dongfang Qi and Han Jun glanced at each other and shook their heads at the same time. There are all kinds of people in this world, and there was no lack of people who didn't care for heroic spirits. However, such people were bound to be spurned by the heroic spirits. Palace Master, the martyr's mirror is ready, another voice said from behind the two. Dongfang Qi couldn't be bothered with the guardian spirit. He immediately had someone open the martyr's mirror and use the aura he had collected from Han Yuntian's corpse. However, the result shocked him greatly. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Dongfang, where's that heroic spirit? Han Jun couldn't understand the symbol on the martyr's mirror, so he could only ask Dongfang Qi. Chapter 129. In the main hall of the martyr's palace, Gunan asked a staff member, will he be healed if I put him in here? The him Gunan mentioned was naturally the guardian spirit of the sun and moon magic box, the white-bearded old man. The one being questioned by Gunan was a young girl with braids. Even though she was unhappy with this fellow who didn't respect martyr spirits, she kept reminding herself not to be rude in front of everyone. However, she wouldn't treat Gunan well either. She said stiffly, that's right. In front of Gunan, there was a small man-made hot spring with many heroic spirits soaking in it. It was used to heal the heroic spirits' injuries and recover their strength. Gunan nodded, grabbed the old man's collar, and threw him in. His actions immediately caused another round of discussion. So crude. How can you treat martyr spirits like this? No one would want someone who doesn't respect martyr spirits like this even after death. So excessive. Gunan completely ignored these discussions. The white-bearded old man had no time to respond to their sympathy. He was comfortably soaking in the hot spring and quickly recovering from his injuries. Perhaps the old man's injuries were strange, or perhaps he was powerful, but the rainbow-colored spring water dimmed at a visible rate after he entered. A short while later, the spring water became completely clear. The martyr spirits who were healing inside could only watch this scene in a daze. The old man's figure also solidified. He suddenly opened his eyes, and a divine light flashed through them. His aura also changed. Gu Zhaoyue have returned. The old man was so excited that he even told Gunan his real name. He laughed heartily as he looked at Gunan, looking as if his plan had succeeded. Didn't expect this, did you? I was imprisoned by the sun and moon magic box for thousands of years just for this day. Speaking of which, I really have to thank you, little friend. Gu Zhaoyue laughed loudly at Gunan as he spoke. At the same time, his aura erupted. It was actually at an extraordinary level, and it was quite extraordinary. If you hadn't destroyed the moon box, I wouldn't have had the chance to escape. Don't worry, since I've regained my freedom, our previous. A black sword pierced through his chest and into the spring behind him, piercing right through him. Gunan stood expressionlessly in front of Gu Zhaoyue, the black sword in his hand. Meanwhile, Gu Zhaoyue was in a daze, unable to speak. His strength was rapidly fading with his injuries. Where's the Mirror of Heroes? Gunan turned to ask the female staff member beside him. The girl was stunned by the sudden turn of events. She subconsciously pointed to the back and said, over there. Hey, wait, you haven't paid yet. Regardless of the relationship between this guy and his heroic spirit, they had used up an entire hot spring. Gunan stopped and looked at the girl who spoke, then at the people around him, and muttered, so troublesome. Before the girl could understand what he meant, the shadow sword had already pierced through her heart. Just as Dongfang Qi said, he's in the hall. A loud noise suddenly came from outside. What's going on? Dongfang Qi shouted. He couldn't imagine that someone would dare cause trouble in the martyr's palace. Did this person want to become enemies with all the heroic spirits on the continent? Han Jun narrowed his eyes. He had a bad feeling about this. Bang! A corpse fell heavily into the ground. It was the person Dongfang Qi had asked about just now. This palace master could no longer hold back and ran to the front hall to check. However, The scene that greeted his eyes left him tongue-tied. The originally bustling, yet orderly martyr's palace was no longer in sight. Blood and corpses were everywhere, and countless sounds of slaughter could be heard coming from inside the hall. There were indeed countless of them, and every one of them was a pitch-black, faceless shadow. They were madly attacking the surroundings and killing every living being in sight. At the center of the hall stood a young man in a gray suit, and beside him was a white-bearded old man. "Sire." Gu Zhaoyue came up to him again with a flattering smile on his face. It was as though everything that had happened earlier was a dream. He was a heroic spirit and didn't have any vital points. Thus, apart from the bloody wound in his mouth, there wasn't much of a difference. "Do you know how to use the martyr's mirror?" Gunan asked in a calm tone, so calm that it didn't sound like a question at all. Gu Zhaoyue felt a chill in his heart. He hurriedly replied, "Yes." This old man operated the martyr's mirror with the army during the Holy War. Gunan didn't say anything and only nodded. Only then did Gu Zhaoyue heave a sigh of relief. He had finally figured out some of Gunan's thoughts. This sire didn't care about loyalty or betrayal. He only cared about who was useful and who wasn't. He could keep those who were useful no matter what they did, but he wouldn't care about those who were useless no matter how loyal they were. On the other side, Dongfang Qi was roaring angrily. "Who are you? How dare you attack the martyr's palace? Aren't you afraid? Wait, you're that heroic spirit." Dongfang Qi suddenly realized something halfway through his sentence. The result of the martyr's mirror was still fresh in his mind. If Dongfang Qi still couldn't figure it out, he wouldn't deserve to be called a palace master. Gunan glanced at him coldly and then at his surroundings. Under the ravaging of his shadow body, there wasn't a single living person in the martyr's palace. In the silence, only the thick smell of blood was fermenting. Beside Dongfang Qi, Han Jun also appeared. He stared at Gunan and said, "Who are you, sir? Why did you attack my Han family?" Neither of them received an answer. What answered them was a sword that was as fast as lightning. As the pitch-black sword flashed past, both Han Jun and Dongfang Qi were shocked. At the same time, a gigantic shadow blocked in front of them. Roar! This was a gigantic black gorilla. It was Dongfang Qi's main hero spirit. Gunan's sword pierced into its body, but did not cause too much damage. Dongfang Qi was not a hero spiritualist, so he was already drenched in cold sweat. He immediately yelled, "Black Star, kill him!" Roar! The black gorilla roared 3 times, and its gigantic palm slammed down. However, to everyone's surprise, Gunan did not dodge and only casually raised his left hand. The black gorilla's slap was actually blocked by him with a single hand. Even the black gorilla was stunned. It forcefully pulled its hand back, but it realized that it could not move at all. Roar! The next moment, a terrified roar could be heard. The black gorilla's gigantic body was lifted up by Gunan with one hand and thrown into the hall behind him. Boom! The black gorilla directly crashed into a pillar and actually broke it, causing dust to fly everywhere. Gunan's gaze swept past the 2 people behind him. The black sword flashed again, and Dongfang Qi's head was separated from his body before he could even make a sound. At this critical moment, Han Jun's head suddenly turned into a wolf's head. He leaped into the sky and actually broke through the ceiling to escape. It's a possession-type hero spirit. Gu Zhaoyue made a judgment. Then, she looked at Gunan fawningly. "Sir, do you want me to go and kill this person?" Gunan waved his hand. "He has no enmity with me. Do I look like someone who would kill people for no reason?" Even with Gu Zhaoyue's shrewdness, she was rendered speechless by these words. After a long time, she hesitantly said, "Then, sir, you killed them because she asked me for money." Gunan pointed at the female employee on the ground, whose shape could no longer be seen. Chapter 130. There were corpses everywhere in the martyr's palace. Only Gunan and Gu Zhaoyue were moving forward slowly. Gunan stepped in the blood, but didn't draw any blood. This was because he covered himself with the power of shadows. He didn't want to dirty his shoes. This was a habit that Gunan had left behind in the game. The Evil God game was so realistic that even the blood wouldn't be refreshed automatically. Players had to figure out how to deal with it themselves. Players were such contradictory creatures. They killed people like flies, but they also hated killing and blood. It wasn't an act, but they really hated it. Gunin walked out of the silence and arrived in front of the martyr's mirror. Gu Zhaoyue had already walked forward and started fiddling with it. It wasn't troublesome to activate the Mirror of Martyr, but it cost a lot of resources. It couldn't be used frequently even in times of war. But Gunin didn't care. It wasn't his money, and he didn't care about money. The Mirror of Martyr's souls quickly reacted. An image formed by countless patterns gradually appeared in front of Gunan. "Sir, there really is a moon slave here," Gu Zhaoyue said in surprise. He didn't expect a rare, ancient, heroic spirit like the moon slave to appear in the modern world. "Where is it?" Gunan wasn't excited and asked calmly. His target was the son of the moon slave, not the moon slave. Gu Zhaoyue gave Gu Nin an address according to the map, which made the latter frown slightly. He recognized the address. It was Imperial City No. 4 High School where Lin Duo was. Why would a moon slave appear in a high school? Just as Gu Nan's expression darkened, Gu Zhaoyue's eyes widened. "Sir, there isn't just one moon slave. There are many. Imperial City No. 4 High School." Lin Duo was walking on the school's forest, holding the hands of two adorable children on her left and right. The charm of the Sun-Moon Demon was too great. The result of holding the two porcelain dolls was that Lin Duo was surrounded by people who were walking with her. Lin Duo's face was filled with helplessness. It wasn't that she didn't expect such an ending, but these two brats refused to stay at home no matter what. The Moon Demon flattened its mouth and looked at Lin Duo with its big, black eyes. Lin Duo immediately laid down her arms and surrendered. "Lin Duo, who are they?" A scream came from behind. It was Lin Duo's classmate and best friend, Tian Tian. She was staring at Lin Duo's left and right, her eyes almost turning into hearts. "They are my heroic spirits." Lin Duo had already lost count of how many times she had tried to explain herself. Isn't your hero spirit that dead face?" Tian Tian was also in the classroom yesterday, so she naturally remembered the king-tier hero spirit that caused a sensation. "Nonsense. Mr. Gunin wouldn't. Mind your own business." Lin Duo wanted to defend her hero spirit, but she could only give up after thinking about it. Tian Tian showed a funny look, which made Lin Duo angry. She simply pulled the two porcelain dolls and walked forward quickly. Today was the beginning of the heroic spirit competition. Although the official competition would only start tomorrow, there would be an opening ceremony and an exhibition match between two famous seniors today. Tian Tian saw that Lin Duo was really angry, so she hurriedly ran to her side and apologized. The Sun Demon and the Moon Demon were a step behind. No one noticed that the two seemingly innocent children were now together and whispering horrifying words to each other. The Moon Slave disaster really originated from here. The Sun Demon, whose face was full of coldness, said in an indifferent tone, but there was a hint of coldness in his voice. The Moon Demon, who often played the role of an ignorant lowly, also had a similar indifferent expression. "This disaster cannot be avoided. Just protect the contractor." The Sun Demon nodded silently. Seeing him like this, the Moon Demon's mouth slightly curled up, and she returned to her usual charming appearance. "When the time comes, I will be responsible for attacking. The contractor will be handed over to you, little brother." The Sun Demon did not remain silent this time. He stared back without hesitation. "I am the elder brother." In the principal's office of Imperial No. 4 High School, a man and a woman in police uniforms stood in front of the principal. "Principal Shui, we are members of the Imperial Police Special Case Team." The female officer showed the principal her ID and introduced herself. "My name is Jiang Shui, and this is my colleague, Jiang Tian." After checking their ID, Principal Shui did not doubt their identities. He was just a little puzzled. "Hello. I wonder what the two officers are here to investigate. Is there anything we can help you with?" Jiang Shui and Jiang Tian looked at each other, and it was Jiang Shui who said, "We want to secretly search all the laboratories and research institutes in the school." Laboratories and research institutes. Principal Shui was even more puzzled. A high school laboratory like theirs could not possibly have any high-end research projects. How did they attract the police? Jiang Shui said in a low voice. Yes, we received a report that someone is conducting a highly dangerous heroic spirit research here, in a laboratory deep inside Imperial Number 4 High School. A few staff members in white coats were running around quickly, transmitting experimental data to the center. In the center of the laboratory, a middle-aged man wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses raised his head slightly, quietly looking at the floating culture chamber in front of him. The petri dish was filled with light blue culture fluid, and wrapped in the culture fluid was a strange humanoid creature. The creature looked like an ordinary person, but it had sharp claws on its hands. There was no hair on its head, only a pair of pointy ears on its bald head. There were a total of 50 culture chambers like this in the not-so-big laboratory. Professor Tian, the 50th moon slave, is also in an active state. It can be awakened at any time. A staff member stood next to Tian Yuan and reported in a low voice. Professor Tian Yuan gently pushed his glasses up and nodded. Then let's begin. Yes. The staff member obviously understood what he meant by begin. He immediately responded and turned around to give the order. Tian Yuan's gaze did not move. He quietly looked at the moon slave in the cultivation chamber. An indescribable expression gradually appeared on his face. Anticipation, longing, fanaticism. Under the control of the staff in the laboratory, the 50 culture chambers lit up at the same time. Under the strong external stimulation, the moon slaves began to open their eyes one by one. However, before they could move, they were all pushed into a narrow secret chamber. It's been 15 years. Finally, this day, Tian Yuan looked down at the moon slaves that were pushed together, and a strange smile appeared on his face.